A guy had been lying in one of the Tokyo hospitals for a long time. He has been confined to this bed for 3 years now. His body is completely immobile, and only his mind is still functioning. The guy couldn't cry, laugh, or make any sounds. He could only think about what was happening around him. His name was Ben, and his only entertainment was watching the TV that hung on the wall, where only boring sports matches were constantly on. Often there were people in his room, such as his mother, who often shed tears as she watched her son slowly die. That night, the doctor told her something depressing. His illness was progressing very quickly, and her son could stop breathing at any moment. The guy was very afraid of his death, but he came to terms with his situation and had already prepared for it. The device that showed his health status emitted a long beep, which indicated that the patient was no longer breathing. And then before his eyes, he saw only darkness. At that moment, he realized that his time had come. But suddenly, he heard someone's enchanting voice, which told him to wake up immediately. She was a girl of extraordinary beauty. Her hair was thick and bright as the sun, and her body was in perfect shape. Ben slowly rubbed his eyes, not understanding what was going on here. And then he was horrified because he couldn't move because of his illness. But now he could easily move his hand. But his shock was abruptly interrupted by the same girl calling him master, which surprised the guy. She was glad that Ben had finally woken up, but the guy was surprised by the picture he saw and asked her who she was. And then the main character fell into a stupor for the second time because he had just said the words out loud. But he was interrupted again by the beauty, who said that her name was Jenny and that today she was his personal security. Ben didn't understand what was going on here. He was embarrassed by the fact that such a girl was sitting on him, who was also dressed revealingly. The main character sheepishly said that he was already 18, and Jenna was so beautiful that he could get an erection. And then he was shocked. Ben's scream echoed throughout the forest, and only the deaf could not hear it. The main character was incredibly surprised that he got an erection and felt these painful sensations down below. It all seemed like a charming dream. He should have died, but somehow he ended up here. And besides, his illness, which had tormented him all these years, fleetingly disappeared. Jenna was surprised by the guy's reaction and asked if her master was okay. Having calmed down, Ben replied that he was fine, and he became curious why the girl was calling him master. She briefly explained to him who she was and what this place was, as well as who Ben was in these parts. The protagonist didn't understand anything from what was said, because the girl told him that he was the heir of the Protoss chosen by the heavenly lord Kel. Jenna explained that the Protoss is the only surviving place inhabited by humanity, meaning the king of the Protoss is the king of the humans. The guy chuckled and said, waving his hands, that Kel couldn't have reincarnated him from another world. It's not scientific and sounds like nonsense. The girl smiled and bit her finger sharply to make it bleed. Jenna resolutely said that since the owner does not believe her, she will provide him with evidence. The smell of her blood should attract predators in the area, and then Ben, having met them, should understand everything. Suddenly a loud roar of 1,000 souls was heard throughout the thicket. They resembled the growling of a pack of wolves, people, and bears at the same time. Behind Ben, footsteps were heard, barely dragging along the ground, but at the same time quickly overtook them. The main character turned around and saw a terrible picture. It was a horde of zombies who came here for the smell of blood. Seeing Ben's horror, Jenna said that these were the very same predators, and that they were now infesting almost the entire Earth. Her face showed determination, and she added that these pale-faced people have turned our world into a real horror. At that moment, Ben believed what he was told and stood in front of the girl, ordering her to leave. The hero resolutely went forward, saying that he would deal with them because he could finally move his muscles and it was time for him to stretch his legs after long years of sitting still. Jenna asked if he was afraid of them because there were so many of them, to which Ben replied that of course he was afraid and terrified at the sight of all these zombies. But he was even more afraid of seeing such a beauty die at their hands. The girl felt pleased by the words spoken, and a smile appeared on her face. Suddenly, she flew up into the sky and said to herself that Mr. Kel had chosen a worthy heir. Ben looked at the pack of zombies again. In their eyes, he no longer saw anything that reminded him of people, only an animal desire to dine on fresh flesh. All his heroism suddenly evaporated somewhere, and he thought that since they were corpses and moving slowly, the best solution would be to run away from them. But the corpses didn't think so. They were quite nimble because their hunger gave them strength. Suddenly, everything disappeared somewhere, and Ben heard a divine voice inside himself that told him that he saw his courage, and that the guy should stop being afraid. Surprised, Ben asked what this place was and who was talking to him. The divine voice spoke to him again and said that this was his inner strength, and that they had one soul. Meanwhile, Jenna, watching the battlefield, thought that if Kel's consciousness really still remained in this world, then it should manifest itself right now. The one and only power, the endless darkness, it must appear at this very moment. Suddenly, a purple light began to leak out from the crowd of zombies, illuminating the gloomy clearing. The zombies surrounding Ben felt the emotion that reminded them that they were human. It was pain. The purple ball that surrounded the protagonist began to scatter zombies in different directions, like the wind sweeping leaves from a tree. In the center of the crowd of zombies, only our hero remained, surrounded by a purple glow. This was his hidden inner strength. Ben looked at his hands where energy was flowing and thought that this was the feeling of rebirth. All that remained of the corpses that the guy had scattered were purple particles that were insanely beautiful. In an instant, they all rushed towards him, causing the main character to freeze in horror. But there was no need to be afraid, because every particle gave energy, and the guy felt a sharp surge of strength. The hero felt a feeling of warmth in his body. All this energy is now concentrated in him. Suddenly he heard something moving towards him. These steps were already familiar to him, because it was that same girl. She shouted that there was no need to panic because this was definitely the owner's ability, namely, endless darkness. Endless darkness can not only absorb energy around it, but also during combat from opponents. The hero wasn't very happy with what Jenna said. He thought that this world had supernatural powers. Apparently his illness was cured thanks to these forces. Suddenly the girl fell to her knees in front of the guy and screamed that the Protoss wouldn't last a day without its master. She confidently told the hero to return to the Protoss and inherit the crown. Ben thought that becoming the king of the Protoss was not the happiness he wanted. After some time, the boy saw dragons in the sky, hovering over the city walls. Jenna asked why the master wasn't very happy about him becoming the king of the Protoss, but she never heard an answer. Ben's face was filled with exhaustion, and he couldn't think of anything but food. The hero answered the girl that the most important thing they should do now is find a place where they can eat. When they approached the majestic wall, Ben asked if this was the city she had told him about. They looked at the huge wall, which seemed to have no end, which protected the city from predators. The guy was surprised that there was no gate in the wall and hoped that they wouldn't have to climb over such a huge structure. Jenna reassured him by saying that it was just a Protoss security system and any resident could open the gate. She put her hand on the wall, and at that very moment the wall began to shake, starting its internal mechanisms. The girl said that the wall is 700 meters high and 20 meters thick, which allows it to hold back any predators. The door opened and a mechanical voice echoed down the hallway greeting Jenna. Although everything looked abandoned from the outside, inside the Protoss inhabitants can still lead a peaceful life. The girl explained that this is thanks to the Protoss guards who protect this city. The city itself is surrounded by a huge abyss and can only be entered through 12 entrances guarded by guards. All guards are elite fighters who have passed a multi-level selection. According to strength, they are divided into levels from strong to weak, a total of 5 levels: S, A, B, C, D. The guy was tired of this story because he was still madly hungry. Suddenly, a rude voice called the girl, telling her that she had again violated the ban on leaving the city. It was a C-rank Protoss guard named Ethan. He was outraged that Jenna did not ask his permission to leave. The girl timidly answered him that he had misunderstood everything and that she was only looking for Mr. Kel. The residents behind the girl's back began to whisper among themselves that she was still looking for a master, calling her stupid. The guard just chuckled at what he heard. He said that her master died 3 years ago, and his body has not been found for a long time. The whole crowd laughed after the leader, causing only embarrassment to the beautiful girl. She was angry at what she heard, because she was already tired of enduring this bullying. She remembered that very day how she ran in the pouring rain to that very battlefield to help her master. But it was too late because her Lord Kel died in battle. But then some guy called out to the guard. It was our hero, who advised Ethan to keep an eye on the gates. He boldly moved towards the crowd, wanting to protect the defenseless girl. Coming closer, Ben with a smirk shamed the guard, saying that it was not nice for a crowd to offend such a nice girl. Ethan jumped up from his chair in anger at the insolence of some stranger, while our hero calmly began to stretch his muscles. The crowd began to whisper again, not understanding why some stranger dared to go against the main guard at this gate. The guard swung his fist sharply, saying that the Protoss was not happy with strangers. But to his surprise, he missed, although the blow was quite strong and fast, because our hero turned out to be faster than him. Ben just grinned in the face of his offender, and his legs sparked from the rapid braking. The hero realized that his body had become so light due to his effect of absorbing energy from enemies. Immediately, all the guards' minions rushed into battle to teach the impudent guy a lesson. But to their surprise, they all fell to the ground and were unable to move. It was Jenna. She decided to help Ben by using a UR rank ability. She loudly told the boys that no one would touch Ben while she was there. Ethan was amused by this because it was the force pull ability, which creates an earth pull in a radius, and it was too weak for his strength. He suddenly took off from the ground, saying that he didn't feel anything, and headed towards the hero. At that very second, he was already over Ben and thought that this fight had already been won. But Ben was able to hold back Ethan's blow with his palm, and the force of the blow caused the ground beneath their feet to crack, but the protagonist didn't even move. The guard didn't understand what had happened because the impudent guy was supposed to lose after that blow. And then he began to understand what was going on because his strength began to leave his body. Ben chuckled because he understood how his absorption abilities worked. The guard was horrified and began to beg him to stop, but Ben decided to teach the bully a lesson. Jenna was scared for her owner because she did not fully understand what had happened and began to call him. The entire crowd, including the attackers who were watching this fight, were shocked that some stranger was able to stop the guard of these gates. At that moment, a red aura shone around the two guys, and suddenly there was a bang. Meanwhile, somewhere in Protoss, in one of the mansions, a tall man in a red velvet robe was enjoying wine on the balcony when a girl suddenly called out to him. It was a rank A Protoss guardian. She asked if he felt what she felt. Count Dracula, a S-rank guardian, looked at her with a tired look and said that he felt this power, the power of Kel. Ethan fell to the ground, exhausted, and whispered in fear that it was endless darkness, the same legendary power. The guard was exhausted and looked like a living corpse. Surprised, he asked the stranger who he was. Ben looked at the defeated guard and said that he was his daddy. The hero called Jenna, who was happy about her master's victory, and asked if they could eat now since he was dying of hunger. They quickly walked through the surprised crowd, talking about how Ben's eating power was enormous, to which the girl replied that he could eat as much as he wanted. The shocked residents only whispered about who this guy was that defeated the guard so easily and used such powerful abilities. But then our heroes were confronted by two girls who were dressed just as beautifully as Jenna. The girl was surprised to see them, because she knew who these girls were and did not expect to see them here. The first girl was dressed in a kimono and held a long katana in her hand. She asked if Jenna had any problems. Her name was Leia. The second girl looked more like a scientist with short green hair. Her name was Sarah. Ben was surprised that Jenna had warrior friends. The girl suddenly pressed herself against the guy and said that there was no need to worry because her master had already helped her, to which the guy became embarrassed and told the girl not to do that because he remembered what happened the last time she sat on him. Leah was surprised that Jenna called a stranger a master because the last time she called only her master that way. To which the girl confidently replied that there could be no mistake, since this guy was chosen by Kel, and he is the heir to the throne. The girls were shocked by what they heard, because they, like Jenna, were also Kel's protectors. And this means that Ben is now their new master. The hero was stunned, because now in this world 2 more girls would follow him. After a long day, the newly formed team headed to Kel's residence. The girls finally fed Ben, and the noodle bowls were gone one after another. Leah and Sarah were amazed by the guy's appetite. They hadn't seen anyone so hungry in a long time. Jenna watched Ben's meal with admiration, still remembering how he stood up for her today. The hero placed the last plate on the table and informed everyone that he was full. Ben's new protectors wondered how many years he hadn't eaten that he could eat so many plates of food, and Jenna asked if the guy liked her dishes. Suddenly, Leia stood up from the table. All this time, she had been thinking about the guy's abilities and wanted to talk to him about it. She didn't understand how the hero inherited the ability of endless darkness and who he really was. The girl told Ben that if he really was Kel's hope, there would be no mercy for him, and his life and training would be harsh. Sarah supported her friend and said that being the owner of these girls is not as easy as it seems at first glance. After all, the guy has to fulfill the last will of Lord Kel, namely, to become the king of the Protoss and destroy all the corpses. Ben was outraged by yet another reminder that he had to become king, because he didn't want to be that way. After dinner, the hero went to his room, thinking about what the girls had in mind today and what destiny awaited him. In his room, he began training, because he had not felt what it was like to train for a long time due to his illness. After 100 push-ups, Ben thought about how everyone in this city was telling him that he should be the king of the Protoss. After all, why should it concern him? Suddenly, he heard a familiar male voice behind him, who calmly told him that this directly concerned him. The guy turned to the stranger because he was sure that he was alone in this room. The picture he saw amazed him. He didn't expect to see this man here. The stranger had long white hair and was wearing gold-toned clothing similar to what nobles wear. It was the Protoss King Kel, the very man everyone mentions when they see Ben. The king told the boy that he was not so stupid if he could recognize him. The hero was shocked by what he saw, because Kel had died long ago and shouldn't be here. The handsome man, smiling, answered the guy that this was true, and his physical body had long been dead. But at the same time, his soul is alive, and right now it is in Ben's body. The hero realized that in this case, it was not a physical body that was sitting in front of him, but only the ghost of that very king. Kel said that this is true, because now he is completely powerless and can only be in the form of a ghost, and also only the hero can see the king, because he is directly connected to him. Ben was outraged by what was said, because the man brazenly pulled him out of another world, and also placed his soul into the guy's body without asking. The hero approached the king and was filled with anger. He assumed that the ghost wanted to use his body for his own purposes. Kel's calm was astonishing. He didn't even move. He reassured the guy by replying that he wasn't interested. The king then suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Ben, saying that he had not called him into the Protoss for this. The guy saw that the man had calmly settled down on his bed, and just as calmly he said that he had called him only to make one deal. The king explained that he gave the boy the most powerful ability in this world, namely, endless darkness. He also allowed the hero to possess the endless riches that Kel had, allowed to have the highest status in this world, and also that Ben would become the king of the Protoss. And after he becomes one, he will need to find those who staged a palace coup d'etat 3 years ago and killed Kel. After listening to the king's touching story for a long time, the hero replied that he didn't care and he wouldn't do it. The man didn't expect such an answer, but he reminded the guy that he was in such a position that he couldn't refuse. Ben decided to have a snack and took a banana from the table, assuming that since the king had summoned him to this world, he definitely had a method to subjugate the guy's will to himself. While he was peeling a banana, he asked Kel to tell him what trump card he had for subjugating the hero. The king jumped out of bed and grinned, replying that the guy was smarter than he thought. After all, the man placed a seal on the hero's body, which can only be removed after fulfilling his condition. Ben was not pleased with what was said, and he asked again what kind of seal was installed in his body. Kel explained that this seal is quite tricky, and every time the hero feels attraction to a woman, he will feel unbearable pain. It is better to die than to live like this. And if the hero refuses, then his life will be like that of an unsuitable man. These words struck the guy to the depths of his soul. His body felt like it was pierced by 1,000 needles. He really didn't expect the Protoss king to blackmail a pawn like that. Ben asked why Kel chose him, because he was an ordinary guy, and the king could have chosen a more suitable candidate for revenge. He also suggested that apparently the man could only choose him and not anyone else. Keela was amazed at how the hero guessed everything, because due to an incurable disease, the hero's muscles had completely atrophied, and he was like a blank sheet of paper. The guy was best suited for the endless darkness. Ben continued his conversation. He said that he was very grateful for the man who gave him a second life. But he is a living person, not someone's toy for revenge. After listening to the guy, Kel, with a smirk on his face, said that at first he had greatly underestimated the hero. Meanwhile, someone's silhouette was sitting on the roof of the house right above Ben's room. It was Leia who was surprised that the main character was talking to himself in the room. After talking with the ghost, Ben went to bed. He assumed that it was not a fact that the seal really existed, because then he would wake up in pain every morning. Suddenly, the door to his room opened, and an unfamiliar girl wearing fishnet stockings appeared on the threshold. She was wearing a rather revealing outfit consisting of a bright jacket, unbuttoned wide open, and a daring collar around her neck. Also part of her outfit was a large minigun that she held to Ben's face. Feeling something was wrong, the guy opened his eyes to see what was going on. The picture he saw shocked him. In front of him stood an enraged girl who was ready to kill our hero at that very moment. Ben understood what a dire situation he was in, so he decided to try to talk before it was too late. He asked what the girl wanted to do with him right now. An unknown beauty with pink hair asked him if he was the owner of the power of endless darkness. The hero didn't understand what to do. He asked the girl to calm down and put away this huge gun, but she was against it, ordering him to shut up. It was Kel's sister, Lucy, who was nicknamed the Little Demon, who said that she was not as naive as Jenny, and that the protagonist used some kind of dirty trick to take over her brother's power. The guy was struck by the girl's words, and he assumed that since she was the king's sister, she must be his personal guard, like the other girls he had met before. Suddenly, shots rang out and the hero tried to dodge them, although it was useless in such a situation. The pillow Ben was lying on now looked like a sieve. The adrenaline rush in his body made the guy start yelling at the girl because she could have just killed him. But the girl didn't slow down. She demanded to tell her how he got her brother's power, otherwise Ben would end up like this pillow. The guy briefly told the whole story of how he arrived in this world and how he received that legendary power. Lucy burst into tears after hearing this, because she thought her brother was dead. But now she finds out that his soul is still alive in this guy's body. Ben hissed like a snake and told the girl to be quiet, because if anyone found out that Kel's soul was in his body, the king's enemies would kill the guy. Overwhelmed with emotion, Lucy threw herself into the hero's arms, calling him her new brother. But her sudden outburst of love was stopped by the guy's hand, which confused the girl. But the girl didn't stop and tried to hug Ben, to which the guy told her that he wasn't her brother and that she shouldn't cuddle up to him. If Lucy really wants to help the hero, then tomorrow she must take him to one place. Surprised by Ben's answer, Lucy asked what kind of place it was. The next day, the girl sat outside the establishment, which was emitting pink neon light, and told all visitors not to enter if they still wanted to live. It was clear from her face that she was very embarrassed to be here. She promised herself that if the hero dared to order such a thing again, she would turn him into a sieve. Inside the establishment, there were very beautiful girls who asked a guy if it was his first time there. One of the girls, slowly eating fruit, suggested Ben to relax and give free rein to his desires. The hero was surrounded by a crowd of beautiful girls who wanted the guy to pay attention to them, but he, judging by the expression on his face, was very reserved. He restrained himself, for he assumed that if he did not give in to the attraction to the girls, then the seal of Kel would disappear. He prayed that he could withstand this test, but the girls surrounding him did not slow down. The guy just kept repeating in his head that he had to be strong and not give in to his emotions. Meanwhile, the girl's passion only grew stronger, and it seemed that even the most persistent guy wouldn't be able to resist. And Ben gave in, shouting that he couldn't stand it. A heartbreaking cry, filled with pain and despair, was heard from the establishment. The door swung open, and Lucy saw Ben quickly coming out. She smirked and sarcastically told the hero that he was a dirty pervert for losing heart in front of the girls. There was only despair on the guy's face. He cursed Kel for putting such a painful seal on him. On the way home, Lucy asked if Ben would participate in the new selection of Protoss Guardians, to which the guy replied that he did not know what was needed for training, and he did not want to watch the gates. The girl explained that in order to become a guardian, one must fulfill one condition, and at that moment Ben turned to her. She thought he was interested, but in fact the guy said he wanted to go to the toilet because he drank a lot of water. The hero walked into the nearest alley, because he wouldn't have made it home in time. And then a strange ball fell in front of him, similar to a baseball, which also had a mouth with teeth. Ben picked it up and thought it was some kind of strange toy that looked very unusual. Suddenly, a similar ball fell next to him, but this time of gigantic size, which scattered all the urns in the area. The hero was stunned by this sight. He didn't understand what was going on here. It was a demon devourer, a demonic-level predator, who was about to attack the guy at that moment. At the same time, Lucy, who was waiting for Ben, began to speculate about what had happened to her brother that he decided to make this weakling his heir. Suddenly, from the alley where the guy went, loud screams and noise were heard, which were hard not to hear. Lucy decided to see what that boy was doing there that was making so much noise. But what she saw there shocked her. Ben jumped out from around the corner, with a huge demon chasing him and trying to eat him. The guy barely dodged it, but was still unharmed for now. The girl was amazed that a demonic-level predator had gotten inside the city so easily. The hero landed on the ground, and small demon balls flew towards him from behind the predator's back. He understood that he wouldn't have time to evade them, and apparently this was the end. But suddenly, all the balls that were flying towards him were pierced by bullets, leaving only traces of their own blood on the guy. Ben turned around and looked in the direction from which his little friends had flown in to see who had saved him. Lucy chuckled, slinging her minigun over her shoulder and asking if the pervert had wet his pants. Realizing what was happening, the guy shouted that she was a pervert, just like her entire family. But the girl didn't pay any attention to him because she noticed a figure standing on the roof of the house and ordered her to come down because she had noticed it a long time ago. She understood who it was because only one person could control predators of the demonic level and also bring them to the city. No one is more capable of this than her brother Kel's wife, Eliza. Ben was surprised by what was said. He asked Lucy again if this girl was really the king's wife. The little demon explained that this girl had a Protoss marriage contract on her body, and that at 20 years old, she was supposed to become the king's wife. At first, Lucy thought that she would become her little sister, but now it seems that this girl is just a cheap doormat. Suddenly, the figure on the roof began to move and rushed down towards our heroes. She landed on the demon's back with lightning speed and advised Lucy not to joke like that because she could not marry a loser like Kel. At this moment, Ben felt very embarrassed because of the beauty that had just appeared before him. And his heart seems to be about to jump out of his chest right now from such fast beats. The stranger straightened her enchanting black hair and said that she just needed to kill this guy and then the marriage contract would disappear. At that moment, a girl flashed through his mind who looked very much like the king's wife. She told Ben to stay away from her because he was not her type. She turned around and walked away the day the guy tried to confess his love to her. Ben couldn't move because he saw such a beautiful girl who was part of his memories. He timidly asked the girl who stood in front of them on a huge monster if she was his goddess.
You got feeling in the floor, boys. Hey. Listen. Saying you believed in everything I played, sharing secrets in the back door, smoke, helping at the promises we made. But when you stormed and tore my branches, you were ghosting fixes in the sun, breaking to my downfall with their glasses, holding what we had just for fun. Fake friends fade like vapor in the morning, clear as the light. I see their shade. I was breaking while they toasted to the story, using my crafts to carve their names. But my heart keeps turning pain into a chorus. I rise again from every flame. Let the fire burn the mask right off their faces. Unlock our king from the embers of my name, from the embers of my name. I've been wrestling with the mirror, asking, was it Lee who wore the lie? Did I barter all my boundaries just to keep a handful by my side? They were cheering when I stumbled, calling my confession just again. But I found a quiet kindness in forgiving who I was back in. From faith and sped like vapor in the morning, clear as the light. I see their shade. I was breaking while they toasted to the story, using my crafts to carve their lamb from the embers. Oh, from the embers of my name.
Lucy looked at the hero in surprise and thought that this guy had apparently gone crazy. Ben still looked at the girl with loving eyes. He extended his hand to her and asked her why she came into this world. Was it really for him? At that very moment, the hero received a strong blow to the face from Eliza, who was perplexed by the fact that he called her a goddess. The guy did a few spins before crashing into the wall, as the girl's blow was quite powerful. Lucy was furious that some girl hit her brother. She started shouting at her not to be arrogant, that she is a bride and can think that she is allowed to do whatever she wants. to which Eliza replied that she could not marry someone who sought entertainment in brothels. This did not calm Lucy down. She screamed that the boy's life was her brother's last will, and if Eliza wanted to kill him, she would have to deal with it. Suddenly, a huge mouth of a monster that everyone had forgotten about appeared in front of the little demon. The girl would not have had time to react to how quickly it approached her. She only had time to notice him right in front of her, and it seems she understood how it would end. The demon swallowed her instantly, biting her minigun in half. Eliza told her afterward that she would kill the guy before Lucy was digested in the demon's stomach. The girl was sure that after such a blow the guy would have suffered greatly, and she hurried towards him to finish him off. Suddenly, from the smoke raised by Ben's landing, a hand reached out to the king's wife. She almost grabbed her by the hair, but the girl managed to sharply dodge by jumping back. Eliza couldn't believe that after such a blow the guy still had the strength to respond to her. A voice came from the thick smoke. It was Ben, who was regretting that he couldn't catch her, although he was quite close to it. The girl quickly realized that he used endless darkness to repel the attack, but she was surprised that in just 2 days, the guy was able to master such a technique to its full extent. The hero was surrounded by an aura of different colors, and it seemed like there wasn't a scratch on him. He told the offender that she couldn't be his goddess because she hadn't visited him for 3 years, which meant she couldn't come to this world for him. Because of the blow, Ben came to his senses and realized that Eliza and the girl from the past were just very similar and only. The girl answered him that since he already had a loved one, then she would not marry him, so he had to die today. The guy just grinned when he heard these words, because he hasn't loved her for a long time, especially if he becomes the king of the Protoss, then many girls will want to be with him, including Eliza. She shouldn't hold on to him, and she shouldn't be jealous of him just because he went to a hotel. Finally, Ben asked the girl if she liked him. Eliza was furious at these words. She couldn't believe that the guy was talking such nonsense. She only came here because she has a marriage contract on her body that she wants to break. Suddenly, the asphalt began to crumble under Ben, and he realized that Eliza had used one of her abilities. Hundreds of demons flew out from the ground, instantly lifting him into the air and beating him from all sides. As they flew up, they turned around and came down to inflict maximum damage on the guy. The force of the impact caused a loud explosion, and the ground around shook. Eliza was sure that this time she managed to catch him. She told the hero that it was all over, because her demons would not leave a single bone of him. The girl didn't want to kill him at all. The guy was just unlucky enough to get to this place and be her target. Suddenly the smoke cleared, and our hero exhaled calmly. The multicolored aura that protected him was still visible around him. Sitting at the bottom of the crater that formed after the impact, Ben agreed that he was unlucky with the place he ended up in. Eliza was horrified. She couldn't believe that this time the legendary power protected the guy. She was also horrified by the fact that her demons now looked like withered corpses. While the girl was trying to understand what had happened, the hero was already heading towards her with the words that in fact, he was not going to become the king of the Protoss. Everyone insists that he go a certain way, but no one asks him what he really wants. He had already died once, and this was the life Ben had decided to live for himself. The hero's words surprised Eliza, but at that moment she heard some noise next to her. Inside the demon that swallowed Lucy, a girl's voice was heard. He asked Eliza if she knew why the little demon was using a machine gun. All because the girl's power is too great, and if it is not controlled, then no one knows what can happen to innocent people. The two fighters were shocked by what they saw. Eliza thought that the compression force of this demon was equal to 2 tons, and she could not open its mouth. Lucy appeared and shouted that this was an R-rank power. Changing her cells, her power becomes limitless. The girl flew out of the monster's mouth like a cannon and headed towards Eliza. If she hit him with her blow, it would be fatal. The ground beneath the king's wife's feet shattered into small pieces from the force of Lucy's blow, but Eliza still managed to dodge it. She quickly climbed onto the roof of the building, realizing that she had greatly underestimated these two. Ben was amazed at how short-tempered Lucy could be, although after what she did with the pillow, it was not surprising. Eliza knew she couldn't defeat them at close range, so she decided to use one of her abilities since the two were standing so close to each other. Her eyes became like 2 blue moons, and her face became extremely tense. Our heroes thought that this girl was running too fast, and they needed to come up with something to catch up with her. A huge blue ball appeared behind Eliza, illuminating the entire surrounding area. This was the Blue Moon ability. Ben and Lucy realized that they could no longer move, and their minds felt like they no longer belonged to them. SSR rank Blue Moon power. Just by looking into Eliza's eyes, she can control weak predators. But if you use the light of the moon, then her power increases many times, and she can control people for a short time. Suddenly behind me, I heard the sound of a blade being pulled out of its sheath. Someone was quickly approaching. Eliza only managed to see the glow of the blade in front of her. She understood that she would not have time to dodge. The heroes felt themselves in their bodies again, but they still couldn't understand what had happened to them. It was Leia. With her sweeping blow, she hit the girl and interrupted the use of the ability. Eliza was only able to spit out the blood that formed after the blow. It seemed the fight was over at that moment. Leia calmly told the girl that if she wanted to kill Ben, she should ask her permission first. Due to the strong blow, Eliza lost consciousness and fell from the roof of the house. Ben didn't lose his composure, and at that very moment he hurried towards the falling girl. He caught her mid-flight, preventing her from dying from falling from the roof. The guy started shouting at Eliza to wake up. He didn't want her to die here, but the girl's mind had already become clouded, and it seemed she had stopped hearing what the hero was trying to tell her. A little later, our heroes went home, namely to the house of Mr. Kell. Eliza suddenly woke up. She didn't understand what was happening because she thought that she had died on the roof. The girl looked around, trying to figure out where she was. There was no wound on her ample chest. Eliza was sure that Leia had pierced her with a sword, but there was not a scratch on her body. The girl tried to remember what happened at that moment and why the fight was lost. Before her eyes was a picture of Leia, lightning fast, drawing her katana, and it seemed Eliza saw a demon behind the girl's back. The king's ex-wife got out of bed to inspect the place. She thought that if Ben's protector was nearby, she would not be able to reach him. Suddenly, approaching the terrace, she saw the same guy who was sitting peacefully and talking to someone. Ben talked to Leia, asking her how she managed to find them. The protector reminded that it was her duty to ensure the heir's safety, and she must always know where the boy was, since it wasn't only Eliza who was hunting his head. Kell's assassins are currently searching for Ben, and his every move is under threat. And we mustn't forget about the other two heirs. They are Count Dracula, who has great influence in the Protoss, and Kell's older sister, the Archangel Mary. These two are also not happy with the appearance of the hero. Right now, Ben gives the impression of being weak, so anyone can try to kill him, and it was stupid to leave Eliza alive. Ben chuckled and replied that he couldn't just watch such a beautiful girl die. Eliza remembered how the guy heroically caught her in the air and helped the girl. She couldn't even think that he was capable of such a thing. The Blue Moon ability had no effect on Leia. She could have easily killed Eliza, but the guy saved her. This touched the girl. Ben continued his dialogue, saying that he doesn't need a wife for free, even though he doesn't intend to be the king of the Protoss. That's why he didn't let her die then. Suddenly the door swung open, and Eliza came out onto the terrace, who didn't seem happy with the guy's words. Ben realized that she had heard everything and decided to play dumb by saying that he hadn't said anything. Eliza was angry, but at the same time embarrassed. She shouted at the guy that she would not become his wife just because he saved her. Ben was so ashamed he didn't know what to do, and the girl firmly declared that she would never marry the guy. The hero was shocked by the girl's straightforwardness, once again receiving such a cruel refusal. The two seemed to have forgotten that there was a third person on the terrace. Leia loudly called the girl's name. The defender was already preparing for battle, taking out a long and sharp katana from her sheath. She warned Eliza that if she wanted to kill Ben, then this time Leia would not use the hilt of the sword. Now the girl understood why there was no wound on her chest. Last time she was hit not with a blade but with a hilt, and only lost consciousness from the force of the blow. Eliza was even more horrified by Leia's strength, and understood that if the protector was next to the guy, the girl would not be able to defeat him. Suddenly the girl flew into the air with lightning speed. Her speed was still as high as during the fight. She loudly shouted the name of some creature, which surprised everyone who was on the terrace at that moment. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a huge bird appeared in the sky and headed towards the house. She instantly appeared above the heroes, and her size was so enormous that the shadow from her wings covered the roof of the estate. Ben was scared that Eliza could summon such creatures. This bird was completely different from the demon that she summoned. In flight, the girl did a deft somersault and landed on the creature's head. She kept her balance deftly, and now it seemed that she had an advantage over the heroes. It was a huge mythical bird, black in color, with a blue glow streaming from its eyes, and the air around it shook with the spread of its enormous wings. Leia wasn't scared by the sight she saw. She knew that, judging by the ancient scriptures, it was a high-level beast. This fight was becoming more and more interesting for her. Having prepared her katana, she decided to cut this beast together with the girl. But at that moment, Eliza turned to the guy and asked if he wanted to marry her. If his answer is yes, then she is ready to discuss the engagement with him, but only in private without strangers. The guy realized that the girl wanted Leia to leave, and he got a little scared. But he decided to give the girl a chance and talk to her, but the defender firmly replied that she would not leave. Ben confidently told Leia to calm down, because if the girl wanted to kill him, she would hardly succeed since she had just barely jumped on her animal. The defender looked at the guy gloomily and replied that if he wanted to die, then so be it. She put her katana in its sheath and prepared to leave, but the guy continued to calm her down, saying that he could stand up for himself. After some time, they were left alone. It was a beautiful night, and somewhere nearby one could hear the chirping of cicadas. Ben understood that Eliza was afraid of Leah, so she asked to be left alone. He asked the girl what she really wanted. Eliza cut him off abruptly, saying she admitted the guy wasn't as bad as she thought. But this does not change anything, because the hero relies only on the endless darkness, and for the higher people he is just a pawn. Ben told the girl that her speech was very offensive, and that this was not what he expected to hear. The girl continued her dialogue by saying that in a month, the Protoss will hold an annual selection of guardians in front of the delegation. And if the hero defeats her and becomes the guardian of the Protoss, then she will help him ascend to the throne. Ben remembered that he had already been told about this selection of guardians, but he still didn't understand what it was. It was a competition where heroes fight predators and often die at their hands. The selection round is held in 2 stages in order to identify outstanding newcomers who will take the place of the deceased guardians. This is how the Protoss provides itself with guards of 72 people. This allows the Protoss to provide protection and preserve the human race. The guy heard what he needed, namely that if he wins, his marriage contract with Eliza will come into force. Eliza sighed and said that it was not enough to become a Protoss guardian. One of the conditions was to ascend to the throne, and only then could she marry him. She can only marry a high-ranking guard, a hero on whom all the Protoss rely. Eliza was embarrassed when she remembered Kel, saying that he was a very handsome and strong man, and whether Ben could become the same. The guy trembled from what he heard, and quietly said that Eliza really loved him. The girl abruptly interrupted him with shouts. She didn't want Ben to say those words out loud. The hero was very indignant, not understanding how the girl fell in love with such a gray-haired deceiver. He has a face like a weakling. Eliza decided to abruptly change the subject, saying that the guy should remember that if he doesn't pass the first round, the competition will be over for him, and that means defeat. And defeat for Ben would mean that he would never be able to ascend the throne and marry Eliza. After the story, the girl was sure that the hero would refuse. But the guy wasn't going to give up. He said that he would gladly join her in this competition. The days flew by and the hero trained, and now a month has passed since their conversation. An unknown guy slowly moved towards a crowd of people who were standing near a large building resembling the Colosseum. It was a young fighter with a bare torso and red hair. On his arms hung bracelets from which a purple glow emanated. When he saw the place where the competitions were held, he was delighted. This place is perfect for the birth of guardians. At the entrance to the selection arena, the guy saw a huge number of people who wanted to go inside. This excited the fighter even more, because all these people looked very strong, and he would finally be able to test his strength. The blood of hell boiled in his body. The guy's name was Adam, and he was from a small village that was located near the Protoss. Walking down the corridor, Adam came out into the arena, which made him even more delighted. The Colosseum was truly enormous, with a mountain towering above it, over which dragons flew, and Adam considered this place worthy of his fist. His admiration was interrupted by some guy who landed right at the fighter's feet. He was thrown back by a handsome man with glasses who had ash-blonde hair, and his suit was decorated with 2 snowflakes. A handsome stranger told the fallen fighter to take his hands off his suit, to which the guy yelled that he had accidentally touched him. The newcomers watching this were delighted with the spectacle, because the selection had not yet begun, but something interesting was already happening. The fighter, who had been lying on the ground a couple of minutes earlier, suddenly flew towards the offender, saying that he was stronger than him and was not afraid to fight him. The ash-haired man didn't like the peasant's reaction. His fingers were covered in ice, and it seemed he already understood that the battle was won. In the blink of an eye, the fighter who had been rushing so furiously was encased in a large block of ice and could no longer move. He could still think and regretted touching the man, but it was too late. The crowd was shocked by what they saw. They wanted to know who he was and where he came from. One of the newcomers recognized this ability. It was an elemental level ability of SSR rank, and if he is not mistaken, then such abilities and love for purity can only be possessed by one person. S-rank Archangel Daniel, who was the son of a noble family nicknamed the Ice Soul Eater. All the girls in the crowd immediately noticed the handsome man and began to confess their love to him. But then someone touched his shoulder again. For the second time that day, someone touched him. It was Adam, who noticed that Daniel was a very strong fighter. Everyone was shocked. Did this redneck really want to end up in ice like the last guy? But one of the crowd recognized the peasant. He said that Adam killed dozens of ghost-level predators last year, and he is a real battle madman. At that moment, the bracelet on the guy's hand began to spin, and his hand burst into a huge flame. He told Daniel that he also had an SSR rank elemental ability and wanted him to fight him. The ash-haired man slowly turned to the guy and calmly ordered him to remove his hand. Meanwhile, a girl who was watching this whole performance and slowly exhaling smoke from her pipe decided to intervene. She shouted that apparently all the fighters were full of energy and couldn't wait to fight. But it was too early to start the game because the selection hadn't started yet. It was the school magistrate who guarded the place, a beautiful girl with a lush, open bust, dressed in furs. Adam realized it was better not to start ahead of time and said that he just decided to say hello to a friend. Daniel no longer thought about the impudent man. He was only worried about whether today would be the day when the same guy who inherited the endless darkness. The crowd lost their spirit when they saw 2 SSR rank abilities from the newbies. They realized they couldn't handle it. Night had fallen, and it was time to announce the start of the qualifying rounds. The director announced that it was time to begin. She was looking forward to the start of the competition. Daniel quietly asked to wait a little longer. It seemed he was waiting for someone. Suddenly a hand rose from the crowd, and someone in a sweet voice shouted to the director not to start the competition. It was Eliza. She said that there was another player who had not yet appeared in the arena. The man recognized the girl and assumed that she had also come to see the guy with the legendary ability, perhaps because of her marriage contract. The director understood who they were talking about because in a month the rumor about the hero with the legendary ability had spread throughout the city. She agreed to wait for such a valuable player, but only for 5 minutes. 5 minutes passed and the crowd started making noise. They were talking about how the hero was scared of the competition and that he definitely wouldn't come. The director agreed that the time was up and it was time to begin the competition. Daniel's face showed disappointment. He couldn't believe that a hero with such abilities would actually not come. Eliza was also upset. She didn't want to believe that Ben had deceived her. Suddenly, far from the crowd, footsteps were heard, slowly heading towards the center of the arena. The girl immediately became prettier when she saw a familiar figure. After all, he kept his promise. It was Ben, surrounded by his female guards, dressed like a true king in a black robe covered with fur. He stated with confidence that all these guys don't look very friendly. The whole crowd was furious that he had appeared in the arena. Some were mad that everyone was waiting for the guy, some because they were afraid of his strength, and only Adam thought that it must be hot in such furs. Ben didn't expect such a reaction. He promised the crowd that he would deal with anyone who stood in his way. Eliza seemed to like how the hero had changed over the past month. He looked like such a confident man. The roar of the crowd was stopped by a loud kick. It was the director who ordered everyone to be quiet. Now that everyone was gathered, she decided to declare the Guardian Selection Conference open. She waved her pipe and quickly hit something in the air. Everything in that place sparkled, and it seemed like space was being torn apart. At the sight of the impact, a huge portal was formed, which announced that the competition had begun. The crowd was shocked, because there had never been any space portals at the qualifiers before, and they didn't understand what it was for. The director stated that the selection process is divided into 2 rounds. In the first, newcomers must go through a portal that will send them out of town. All they need to do is stay in the designated area, and in these places the fighters must live for 5 days. Only those who survived are eligible to participate in the second round of selection. The crowd began to panic, because it was impossible to live outside the city for 5 days, and it was unknown where this portal would send them, perhaps straight to the lair of the monsters. The director stated that the guard's duty is to protect the city, and if newcomers are afraid, they can refrain from participating and try again next year. Hands immediately reached out from the crowd. Many didn't want to participate in this and decided to try next time. It took some time before there were any people left in the arena who wanted to try it, and many left the place without trying it. Now that only the brave remained, the director asked who would decide to go first. Ben, without thinking twice, said that he would go first. Apparently, he had some kind of plan. Eliza and Daniel were surprised by what was said. The girl understood that the guy was up to something. Ben actually had a plan. He decided that if he went first, he would have time to study the area. This would give him an advantage over the others, and he should not miss it. Suddenly, someone grabbed his black robe, wanting to attract his attention. It was Jenna. She was worried about the guy and told him that she had a bad feeling, and he shouldn't go first. Ben hastened to reassure the girl and told her that he would meet them after the first stage. After these words, the hero quickly walked towards the mystical portal. Without hesitation, he entered the portal, which would take him to an unknown place. Coming out of the portal, there was only horror in his eyes from what he saw. In front of him was a huge three-eyed monster, resembling an octopus. At that moment, Ben realized that he was not very lucky after all. It was a ghostly predator that was enraged by the fact that some person had invaded its lair. Its size was so enormous that it seemed that with one tentacle it could break through a building. The monster aimed one of these tentacles at the hero in order to punish the impudent one with one blow. Ben didn't have time to dodge. The impact caused the ground beneath him to fly apart in different directions, and it seemed that no one could survive such damage. But the guy was protected by endless darkness. He easily raised the tentacle and said that he was incredibly lucky that he teleported straight to such an enemy. It's a pity he doesn't have time for this battle because he had an appointment. In a rage, the predator directed 3 more of its tentacles towards the guy to finish what he started. But Ben deftly dodged the blow, even though the attack was quite fast. He landed on one of the tentacles to quickly reach the enemy's vulnerable spot. While Ben was running along the tentacle, the monster thought that the hero had pretty good abilities for an ordinary person. But the guy had already gotten to the enemy's weak spot. He understood that he needed to finish off the predator quickly, otherwise other fighters could discover his location. Meanwhile, everything was peaceful and calm in the arena, and no one knew what was happening on the other side of the portal. The little demon was worried that Ben might not cope because the rules had changed, and now no one could guarantee that nothing would happen to him. But Leia decided to cheer the girl up by saying that the guy is not as simple as he seems. From the first day he entered the Star Spirit Garden, he was extremely disciplined. He went to bed at 10 p.m. and woke up at 7 a.m., keeping a perfect schedule. Every day the hero did 100 push-ups, squats, and crunches, and there wasn't a single day when he missed a workout. And at the end of the long run, 10 kilometers long, he never stopped despite the wind and rain. There is always energy in his body, and if he cannot move, he will die because of it. That's why he's like Leia. He has that fighting instinct, and she understands that people like him won't die so easily. Ben's crushing blow made the predator's eyes pop out. It was impossible to defend against such a blow. Purple sparks began to penetrate the monster's entire body, causing colossal damage. Suddenly, purple energy began to emerge from the monster, which the guy had already seen before when he fought against the corpses. He immediately realized that this was the energy that remained from the squid, and now he would absorb it. Suddenly, a corpse's hand emerged from the tentacle, which seemed impossible because the predator was defeated. Following the hand, a zombie appeared, which gradually crawled out. When it came out halfway from his mouth and eyes, green smoke began to come out, which gradually scattered. This fog began to spread throughout the area. The hero was sure that he had defeated the squid, but now he did not understand what was happening. And then he thought that perhaps the predator was emitting a signal and attracting other monsters to itself. Suddenly, everything around sparkled, and the air became cold as if winter had arrived. The predator's body was instantly covered in ice from start to finish. Now in front of Ben, there was only an ice block that looked like a large mountain. From what he saw, the guy froze in place and did not understand what had just happened. An unfamiliar figure spoke behind him, and the hero turned to see who was there. The figure said that the predator asked for help from its kind. It was Daniel. He explained that originally it was a humanoid predator, but when people eat too much, they become like that. Ben was outraged that the stranger not only spied on him, but also stole his trophy. Adjusting his glasses, the nobleman replied that if he hadn't helped the guy, he would now be surrounded by predators, and the hero should be grateful to him. The guy didn't listen to Daniel's words and turned around and said that he didn't have time to fight him because he needed to find the person with whom he had an appointment. Suddenly the air became cold again, and snowflakes appeared around the hero. The guy had already seen this attack a couple of minutes ago. Ben asked the stranger what he was going to do, covering himself with his aura of endless darkness. Daniel told the guy that the rules were that everyone had to live there for 5 days, which meant that the rules allowed the participants to eliminate their competitors. Ben turned to him and replied that it seemed that by the word competitor, he meant him specifically. Meanwhile, in the forest, one of the participants was running away from a crowd of predators. Something on his hand made a sound similar to a watch alert as he approached an unknown blue wall. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion that tore the guy apart. The competition was over for him. A cooling corpse of a zombie, which had been defeated by someone, was visible in the ground. It was Jenna who dealt with the predators that attacked her. She wondered where her master had teleported to because she had to find him. Suddenly, the watch on her hand started making a piercing sound. It was a locator that was given to the player upon entry, and if it made a sound, it meant it had turned on the warning system for the player. After all, there was only one rule of the game in the competition: to survive in your own area for 5 days. If you go out of bounds, you will likely be excluded from the competition. Jenna hurried to find her owner. She moved quickly along the branches like a cat. She also understood that she should not go beyond the boundaries of the field to which the portal sent her. Descending from the trees, she walked on foot. All this being observed by a mysterious figure in a cloak. It was an unknown guest who was glad to have found her. As Jenna moved through the forest, she began to suspect something was wrong. She had the feeling that she was being followed all this time. She suddenly started to brake in order to turn around and see who was hiding in the treetops. Stopping, the girl shouted loudly for the stranger to come out. Looking into the darkness, she asked why the ghost continued to haunt her all this time. The guy was only glad that she finally noticed him. He had been craving a fight for a long time. An unknown figure descended from the tree with lightning speed and landed right in front of the girl. The stranger said that she was worthy of being Ben's bodyguard and asked when the girl noticed him. Jenna replied that she noticed him at the very beginning and asked what this guy wanted from her. The stranger threw off his cloak to reveal his true form. It was the electric god. Laughing, he said that someone wants Ben to die in this forest, so Jenna should take him to the hero. But the girl was determined. She had to ensure her master's safety at any cost. At that very second, the villain sank into the ground due to the strong gravity that was pressing on him. Gravitational field, one of the girl's abilities. Every time she counted the numbers, the force of gravity in the radius increased. The guy's legs were already knee-deep in the ground. In this position, he would not have been able to use his abilities against the girl. But he was only amused by the protector's ability. When he began to sink into the ground, he realized that it was a matter of gravity. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, another battle seemed to be brewing. Daniel told Ben that just because the guy wasn't a threat to him right now, he wouldn't fight him. The hero didn't understand what was happening. He wanted to know what this ash-haired man wanted. The nobleman assured the boy that there was no need to be nervous, because he had come here to tell the boy one thing. Approaching Ben, he asked him to stay alive in this forest by any means necessary. After this, Daniel headed forward into the thicket of the forest. The hero didn't understand what he meant, and asked again why the stranger was saying that. The nobleman turned around and explained that someone simply wanted the guy to die and not pass the first round. To which Ben replied that many people want him dead, but so far no one has managed to kill him. Daniel chuckled, because the guy still didn't understand what the nobleman had guessed as soon as he heard the rules of the competition. The purpose of the rules has changed because of Ben. It needs to be made so that he is easier to kill, and anyone who can change the selection rules is definitely a very powerful person. As he left, he added that if a guy wants to be in the Star Spirit Garden, he must survive the first round. Watching the stranger go, Ben wondered who it was and why he was helping him. But suddenly he felt a strange force that acted on him. The hero had the feeling that he was moving against his will, and he turned in the direction he was being pulled. He was drawn to the thicket of the forest. Ben immediately realized that he needed to run there. The thunder god struck the girl with lightning speed, which she did not expect, as she slammed him into the ground. He swung and struck the girl again, and flashes of lightning sparked at the place of impact. The power of her ability sent Jenna flying through the trees, breaking each one in her path. The blow was of monstrous force. After flying some distance, the girl crashed into the ground with a roar. She was covered in bruises and scratches, but still managed to survive the landing. Jenna didn't know that the guy had the power of lightning. He used it to accelerate and overcome the gravity that the girl created. Swaying, she struggled to her feet. She understood that he was too dangerous, and under no circumstances should he approach her master. At that very second, the guy was next to the girl. She didn't even notice how he had covered such a large distance in a second. His speed was truly amazing. From behind his back, he began to take out a knife, which was also filled with lightning, just like its owner. Laughing, he said that since Jenna wouldn't take him to Ben, he would find him himself with the girl's corpse on his shoulder. But the defender did not lose her confidence. She replied that the stranger would not dare touch a hair on her master's head. At the same time, on the other side of the forest, someone was running forward at such a speed that only dust from his tracks could be seen. 3 guys noticed the runner and realized that it was the guy everyone was talking about. They were teleported together, which means the 3 of them can handle 1 warrior. But then one of the fighters was surprised that the runner did not stop, but ran at great speed straight towards them. Ben ran so fast that he didn't even notice the 3 newcomers and knocked them down like bowling pins. He didn't stop because he had a feeling that Jenna was in danger. The girl was beaten all over and could barely stand on her feet. She had wounds all over her body. She just kept telling herself that she was here to help her master and shouldn't give up. The Thunder God only scoffed that such a beautiful girl should die because of such a short-lived master. He raised his blade over the girl's head to deliver the finishing blow. Suddenly, he felt something trembling behind his back and moving towards him. A lightning-fast elbow struck the guy's neck, and he couldn't even figure out what had happened. The force of the blow sent the offender flying forward at great speed. There was a stone in his path, which the thunder god hit with such force that the entire thicket trembled at that moment. Jenna turned around in surprise, as she had already prepared herself for the fact that she was about to die. Near the stone where the offender crashed stood her owner, who arrived just in time. Ben stood near the rock where his opponent crashed. The force of the blow was so great that a crater formed in the place where the thunder god landed. The guy was hit in the neck, so he no longer showed signs of life. The hero was glad that he made it in time, because if he had been even a minute late, it would have been the end of Jenna. After some time, the heroes were sitting in a clearing. The guy was apologizing to the girl for the fact that because of him, she went to this competition. Jenna calmed the guy down. She was sorry that she, as a guard, could not protect her master, and he himself had to protect her. She was also surprised at how he was able to find her in such a large forest. Ben said he felt the girl was in danger, and even sensed where she was. The girl was amazed that her master had such an ability. Although he did not have such an ability, it was only a feeling. Meanwhile, strange things began to happen in the place where the battle ended. The DNA in the body of the defeated warrior began to rebuild itself, and by some miracle he began to come back to life. The body, dead a minute ago, began to move slightly, trying to come to its senses. A strong wind blew and Jenna started coughing. Her wounds were very deep. The guy, without thinking twice, took off his robe and gave it to the girl so that she wouldn't freeze under the tree. He told the defender to dress him and have a good rest after the fight, and he would look after her in the meantime. The hero added that the girl had been looking after the guy for the last month, and now it was his turn to look after her. These words touched her very much, and despite the severe wounds, a sweet smile shone on her face. It was dark outside. The girl fell asleep recovering from the fight, and the guy, as promised, sat and guarded her. Not far from their small camp, strange tentacles began to move. They dug into the ground to attack our heroes unnoticed. Emerging behind Ben, they headed straight towards him in order to kill him before he realized anything. But with a quick movement of his hand, the hero grabbed the tentacles and tore them apart, stopping the enemy's attack. He had long since realized that the god of thunder was pretending to be dead, because if he died, Ben would begin to absorb his life energy. The guy explained that he would indeed be dead from such a blow to the neck, but he was injected with a drug that turns him into a predator, so it is not so easy to kill him. The striker also thought that the hero had absorbed the power of the gatekeeper he had fought earlier, and that he had been training hard for the last month. Perhaps Ben could reach level B. Suddenly, the thunder god began to twist, and an ominous aura mixed with lightning bolts began to emanate around him. A bunch of other tentacles that were on his hand suddenly burst out of his back, and the color of his skin changed to gray like that of corpses. Ben didn't expect to see such a sight. What was happening to this guy, and who he was starting to turn into, he also didn't understand. It was the highest form of the thunder god, the robust body of a predator and SSR rank lightning. He laughed hysterically, shouting that the hero was about to die, because the predator was at the top of Class B. But Ben didn't listen to the offender for long, and immediately hit him in the face, ordering him to shut up. The force of the blow sent the thunder god flying towards the forest, but Ben moved to where the guy was flying in order to finish him off. He slammed him into the ground with all his might, grabbing his face with his hand. Due to the speed of the blow, the ground beneath the guy broke, creating another crater. This time, energy began to emerge from it, which the hero was ready to absorb in order to gain the ability of a fighter. In a rage, he stood over his opponent, saying that if the thunder god is the best in Class B, then the hero is the pinnacle of Class B. But the enemy didn't listen to the guy. He only thought that the most terrible ability in the endless darkness is that it sucks out the energy and abilities of the opponent. He didn't understand how Ben was able to master such power in just a month. His life flashed before his eyes. He remembered the man in the protective suit who warned him that the drug was experimental, and whether the guy really wanted to inject himself with it. The future god of thunder was chained to a wall, and doctors monitored his heartbeat to ensure the experiment was successful. Through the intense pain, he chuckled and told them to continue because the guy could handle it. After the experiment, the gray-haired old man explained to the boy that he had received the strong body of a predator, but the fusion of cells was insufficient, and he still had not received any second ability. He was disappointed in this, because despite the fact that the soldier survived, the experiment was a failure. The unknown man continued to say that in order to create an artificial predator body with double strength, they are still missing one thing. This is Ben's body, the dark infinity crystal. Preparing for the blow and concentrating the energy in his hand, the hero asked the enemy how he managed to take on the form of a predator and remain sane. He also wanted to know who the guy's boss was and what their goal was, but the warrior, resigned to defeat, refused to tell Ben the truth. He only said that according to his calculations, the hero cannot be his opponent, and he is very curious why he is much stronger than expected. Ben simply replied that he simply had an extraordinary talent, and it seemed the conversation was over. But suddenly the clouds thickened, and rain began to fall from the sky, signaling that a thunderstorm was about to begin. The guy was surprised by this phenomenon. He realized that today God was on his side. Feeling a surge of strength, the predator asked Ben if he knew why lightning strikes during rain. But the hero didn't listen to him. He was preparing to deliver the final blow by asking what the guy's last words would be. Lightning crackled in the sky as the god of thunder drew the elements towards himself, directing his strike. Suspecting that something was about to happen, Jenna headed towards her owner. She shouted to her master that it was dangerous and that he should leave. There was a roar and a huge bolt of lightning struck from the sky, directed towards where Ben was standing. The lightning didn't hit him because something pushed him away, and he fell to the ground unharmed. A crater formed where the lightning struck. If the hero had been there, his endless darkness would not have saved him. The dust raised by the blow began to clear, and Ben began to come to his senses. At that moment, he realized what had happened and saw a terrible picture that horrified him. He saw Jenna at the place where lightning struck. The girl defended her master by throwing him back and taking the blow herself. Unfortunately, after that, she showed no signs of life. The god of thunder was already heading towards the hero, saying that the girl had ruined his plan because she was ready to die for her master. Lightning gave him enough energy to recover. It seemed that even the heavens helped him in this battle. Ben became enraged. An aura of endless darkness began to surround him. He could not believe that Jenna gave her life for him. The hero jumped at lightning speed towards the offender, shouting that he would kill him. The thunder god wasn't afraid of the guy, but simply directed his electric tentacles towards him to protect himself. The tentacles pierced Ben's body. Blood began to flow from all parts of the body, but the guy did not feel pain because he was intoxicated with rage. He was getting closer and closer to the enemy, and the tentacles were piercing more and more parts of his body. The predator thought the guy was crazy because he was still trying to hit him despite the tentacle attack. Ben reached his target, and his punch, into which he put all his strength, flew straight into the face. The hero's blow sent the predator crashing into the ground, and that was the moment it all ended for him. Due to the enormous power, Ben traveled some distance with the enemy, leaving behind only piles of stones that shattered into pieces. The rain continued to pour, but the elements would no longer help the god of thunder, because such a blow could not be survived. The guy put all his strength and rage into it. The predator was hanging on the wall of the crater, and its head was firmly pressed into the ground so that it could not get out. Finally, Ben told him that it no longer mattered who he was and who was behind this guy. After all, he will find them one by one until he completely destroys them. Purple balls started appearing from the guy's body. That was all his energy. She went to Ben so that he could absorb the power and abilities of his opponent. But then lightning struck him, which went through his entire body. The guy trembled. He did not expect such an effect from the energy of the god of thunder. His whole body was permeated with wild pain. It felt like 1,000 needles were piercing his body from the inside. Ben couldn't bear the force and lost consciousness, remaining lying with Jenna in the rain in a dangerous forest. The girl handed the guy a bottle of water, offering him a refreshment. This was one of the hero's memories. She asked him if he really wanted to take part in the competition, as it could be quite dangerous. Ben was surprised by this question, because everyone keeps saying that he needs to become king. As a security guard, Jenna wanted him to be involved, but as a friend, she didn't want the hero to get hurt. The guy was shocked by the girl's confession, because he thought that everyone considered him an instrument for Kel's revenge. He didn't know that Jenna cared about him with all her heart. The girl got up from the bench and declared that since she was not a Protoss guard, she could also apply to participate in the competition. And so Jenna will go with the owner, so she won't have to worry about him. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Protoss, two people were discussing something among themselves. The girl in the red velvet kimono said that their operation had failed, and the signal had disappeared. She thought that with the power that the Thunder God had, it was impossible to lose. Was it possible that they had the wrong information about Ben's power? The gray-haired old man slowly said that maybe they were missing something. Most likely someone else went with the guy and is helping him in this competition. The girl was surprised because she thought that he only had 4 bodyguards with him. The old man, angry at the failure, said that they shouldn't think about it now, because there were 4 days left before the start of the selection. So the girl should go get the corpse of the predator who lost the fight. Suddenly, the figure of a girl found two heroes who were lying at the bottom of the crater without strength. It was Eliza. She understood that while the hero was unconscious, this was an excellent chance to kill him and terminate the marriage contract. She slowly approached the boy's wounded body. He still didn't move and couldn't defend himself. Eliza prepared to attack to finish off the guy. But at that moment, for some reason, she began to hesitate. It seemed to her that the guy was blaming her for what she was trying to do now. The girl struck and blood flowed in all directions. She pierced the abdominal cavity and grabbed the heart with her hand, which she then tore out. But not from Ben's chest, but from the chest of the zombie that snuck up behind her. The smell of the hero's blood drew a crowd of the dead, eager to feast on fresh flesh. She turned to the guy and said that she was helping him only because he himself was not in a condition to fight. Eliza began to fight the monsters, killing zombies one after another. They weren't her rivals, so it was easy. After Eliza dealt with all the enemies, she said that it doesn't matter how many there are because they are too weak. But suddenly the ground shook under the girl's feet. It felt like an earthquake had started. A huge monster, the size of a 5-story building, emerged from the ground. On his head, he had a helmet similar to a knight's, and steam was emitting from his mouth. Eliza was shocked by the size of the creature. She wondered who it was. It was a demon-level predator called the Arbiter, and he was furious that the girl dared to attack his servants. He quickly raised his hand above his head, sentencing the girl to death. The referee's hands fell on Eliza like a meteorite falling to the ground. Everything around shook from the colossal force of the blow. But the girl was quick, as always, and she managed to dodge the attack. Jumping towards the tree, Eliza pushed off sharply from it to fly towards the referee. She was faster than the giant, so she was sure that he would not have time to dodge her attack. But the referee managed to put his hand in front of him, which the girl hit. He threw her to the ground. It seemed the enemy was not so simple, and it would be more difficult to defeat him than a crowd of zombies. The Arbiter shouted at the girl not to contradict him. She landed next to the crater where the heroes lay, but was not seriously injured. There were only a couple of bruises and scratches on her. Eliza thought about the fact that the level of a predator depends on how many people it has eaten. Having eaten 100, it will get a ghost level, but this one was many times stronger than such predators. Could he really eat 1,000 people and reach the demonic level? The monster didn't wait and rushed to attack. Attacking, he constantly repeated that he was sentencing her to death. And then the girl realized that the attack was not directed at her. The Arbiter attacks the unconscious Jenna and Ben. Rained down from the sky. The force was so great that the earth literally rose into the air, and stones crumbled like cookies. The referee shouted that no one could escape his justice, and prepared for a new attack. His rage knew no bounds. He struck one last time at the place where our heroes were located. That's it. The battlefield looked like a field after a meteor shower, and the referee was confident that he had won. But as soon as the dust settled, he saw the hooves of the creature standing over Eliza, who seemed unharmed by the blows, just like the heroes who lay unconscious. The creature exhaled steam, and the referee was surprised that he was able to stop its attack. It was a macho rhinoceros, a ghost-level predator who enjoyed receiving fierce and powerful blows. The more you beat him, the more he gets angry. After all, he was useful to Eliza. The girl thought that she couldn't leave the heroes here because Ben once saved her, which means now it's her turn to help him. The rhinoceros provoked the predator to attack it more and more. The referee was surprised by such an unusual creature and immediately rushed to attack. But the rhinoceros only wanted this. He got pleasure every time the predator struck him. Eliza understood that although the macho was resilient, everything had its limits, and over time they would lose. So she had to act while there was time. She took out a card of another creature from her pocket. The referee continued to beat the defender. He wanted the rhinoceros to die and hit him again. But at that moment, Eliza used the ability of visual exchange, inhabiting the body of her beast. The referee froze because his gaze was directed into the macho's eyes, and now he was under the girl's control. He understood that he was much stronger than her, and therefore he would not be able to hold her back for more than 3 seconds. Suddenly, a voice was heard behind the predator, shouting that 3 seconds would be enough for them to deal with him. A whirlwind flew into the Arbiter, passing right through the creature. It was Eliza's phoenix, which she summoned while the monster was attacking the rhinoceros. He was not prepared for this. Now there was a huge hole in his chest, because of which he was losing his balance and his strength. The referee fell to the ground with a thud, showing no signs of life. The girl was glad that they won. It seemed that after such a wound, the monster would not be able to continue the fight. But the phoenix warned that it was too early to rejoice, because the predator had simply fallen, but had not yet died. Now he was unconscious from the wounds he had received, but it would return to him quite soon. After all, he had a unique ability of exploitation, with the help of which he could enslave creatures located on his territory and appropriate their life energy. Therefore, if you continue to fight him on his territory, you will not be able to defeat him, because he will constantly supply himself with energy. In this case, it is better to get away while there is still time. Eliza didn't like what the Phoenix said. She wasn't used to running from the battlefield. It's the 4th day of the first round of Protoss Guard selection, and our heroes have taken refuge in a rock after a tough fight. Ben jerked awake, screaming Jenny's name, the fight she had fought to protect him still in his eyes. He didn't immediately understand where he was and how he got there, but luckily for him, he saw a girl lying next to him. Jenny was still breathing, albeit with difficulty. She was covered in wounds, and a green healing aura glowed around her. Some kind of animal next to the girl, which was waving its paws vigorously. It was a white hedgehog, a low-level predator. He was a very cute furry animal, who was currently casting some kind of spell. Ben was worried about the girl, and he was afraid that this beast was now doing something to her. Suddenly, the little predator jumped up and grabbed the girl's chest. It seemed he was excited about something. The hero was outraged by this picture. He asked the animal where it put its paws. But then Eliza appeared and told Ben not to scare the baby, because he had been healing their wounds all this time. The guy asked the girl why she protected them, to which she replied that she didn't want to remain indebted to the hero. If she saw how they were being eaten by predators, she would have nightmares. Ben was concerned about Jenny's condition, and asked if she could be cured, to which Eliza replied that she highly doubted it. Usually people don't survive with such injuries, but her pulse is fine. The wounds are very serious, and even if she manages to recover, she will not live long. Pain and resentment crept into Ben's heart, because the girl suffered because she defended him. He quickly jumped to his feet, and the air around him became electric. He asked Eliza if she could help him for Jenny's sake. He was filled with rage. He wanted to find those who did this to the girl. A month earlier, Kel told the boy that Ben had little time to train, but the king would tell him everything he knew about his ability. The training will take place in this room instead of sleeping. The hero realized that this is necessary so that others will not notice his progress. Kel was surprised that the guy figured out why no one should see Ben's abilities. While eating an apple, the hero said that he became the subject of discussion when he entered the city and used endless darkness, and if he was seen using it again, he would be hunted. The guy still thought that Kel would tell him to have fun to the fullest and have a great time. Besides, because of the marriage contract, Eliza also wants him dead. He assumed that the king knew that it would be like this. If he just goes to sign up for the qualifiers, the guy's plan will be immediately figured out, and the hero might not even live to see the start of the qualifiers. He also added that Kel most likely expected the guy to participate for the sake of a beautiful girl. After listening to everything Ben had to say, the king declared that for an 18-year-old boy, he was very smart. The first round of Protoss Guard selection has concluded. The hero was sitting in a tree in ambush. He assumed that whoever was behind the attackers would want to remove the body and evidence in order to remain in the shadows. His plan was to catch the man who would come for the body and interrogate him. And he was right. Suddenly, a graceful figure of a girl appeared at the crater. She was wearing a very beautiful red dress, and in her hand she was holding a weapon that looked like a sickle. It was Vanessa, the weapons master, who swung her sickle, directing its chain towards the corpse. The chain wrapped around the dead thunder god and pulled him out of the crater. The corpse fell next to the girl. She laughed at the deceased, because he was turned into a predator, and he was still weak. Still, she admired Ben's strength and wanted to get to know him better. Suddenly, the air became electrified, and a bolt of lightning was moving towards the girl. Ben tried to concentrate and release energy from his finger for the first time, and it turned out it wasn't that difficult. The guy completely mastered the power of his last defeated enemy. When the dust began to clear, he saw a strange shield from which the remains of lightning emanated. Behind him was a girl who said that she could change the appearance of her weapon at will. This is her SR rank ability. She appreciated Ben's resourcefulness in setting up an ambush for whoever came for the body. The guy was filled with rage. At that moment, an electric aura appeared around him, which tore his shirt to shreds. He demanded that the girl immediately tell him who was behind her. Ben's power was so great that the released lightning struck the sky, and all nearby creatures could hear the thunder. Vanessa realized that she had underestimated the guy, because he was able to master the ability of her former ally in just a few days, and release such a powerful electrical charge. She decided to test the hero's abilities more thoroughly this time by rushing into attack. Her weapon turning into a dragon crescent, the girl screamed that if Ben wanted to find out who she was working for, he should force her. Swinging her spear, she delivered her first blow, which seemed destined to hit the unarmed guy. But Ben stopped the attack by creating a sword out of electricity. He shouted that if the girl uses a weapon, then he will use it too. Vanessa was surprised that the guy was able to create a weapon out of lightning. Suddenly, the battlefield was surrounded by smoke. The girl turned her spear into a smoke bomb. The smoke cleared, and the hero stood all alone holding 2 lightning swords in his hands. He looked around in search of the enemy, but could not find him anywhere. The guy wondered where the girl who had just attacked him had disappeared to. In the distance, the sight of a sniper rifle pointed at him flashed. It was a Sky Seeker, the rifle Vanessa had turned her weapon into. The girl was an assassin with incredible accuracy, and right now she was aiming at Ben's head. Vanessa acts without fear and without hesitation, and her smile hides her intentions. And as soon as her opponents relax, she will immediately shoot them in the head. A loud shot rang out, and the bullet flew towards the hero at great speed. Ben stood motionless, and suddenly he kicked the ground, sending a small stone flying into the air. The bullet bounced off the stone, and the hero was again covered in an electric field because he realized where his enemy was hiding. The girl was shocked that he changed the trajectory of the bullet with a stone. It seemed impossible to her. The guy combined his 2 swords into one and said that he knows how to stand against a sniper, and now it is his turn to attack. He swung his electric harpoon and threw it with great force towards Vanessa. The heavenly spear immediately caught up with the stunned girl. Its power was so great that it plowed the earth behind it. She was caught off guard. She realized that Ben was much stronger than last time, and all that could protect her was the sacred shield. There was an explosion, the noise of which spread throughout the area along with the sound of lightning. Vanessa was sitting on the ground. She was able to take cover with her ability, but her shield was broken and she had no more weapons left. She trembled and experienced a new feeling that she had never experienced before. It was a feeling of humiliation. The girl thought that the guy was stronger than her, and at the same time Ben was slowly approaching his opponent. Suddenly he started to unbuckle his belt. Vanessa didn't expect that from the guy. She asked him what he was going to do right now. With a smirk on his face, the hero replied that since she didn't want to tell who she was working for, and death would be an easy way out for her, he would do something else. The girl trembled, wondering if Ben was really going to do what she thought. He took off his belt and threw it on the ground, saying that they were alone here, and the girl was too charming. If he did something wrong, she would not be offended. Vanessa, embarrassed, began to crawl away from the guy, and he continued to talk about how his bodyguards say that he is the best of men, and the girls at the brothel can't get enough of him when he comes. What was about to happen flashed through the girl's head. Vanessa thought that today she would be offended not only by her defeat, but also by being disgraced. She was very embarrassed. The picture she presented did not please her. The girl screamed when Ben started unzipping his pants. Out of desperation, she agreed to tell who she worked for, just so the hero wouldn't come up. She works for a mysterious old man, the dean of the faculty of the Academy of Sciences, Mr. Herbert. The guy was surprised by the answer, because the Protoss throne shouldn't concern the old man, so why does he want to kill Ben? The confused girl explained that it wasn't about the throne, but about the hero's abilities. It's all about the origin of the Infinite Darkness ability. The Guardians and Predators abilities originate from a meteorite stored in the Academy of Sciences. The dean used it to turn the guards into predators and create powerful warriors. But the experiment failed. They acquired the bodies of predators, but also adopted their bloodthirstiness, which means the effect of the transformation was unstable. Ben realized that one of them was sent to kill him. Now it is not surprising that he lost. The girl replied that the experiment was unsuccessful not because of this, but because the power of the meteorite is imperfect, and the Guardians were unable to obtain the abilities. The hero assumed that since the dean was hunting him, it meant that Ben's ability could make the force perfect. Vanessa confirmed his guess. The dean found 2 cores in the meteorite, a core of light and a core of darkness. The ability of light is radiation, and the ability of darkness is absorption, and if they are combined, the meteorite will gain full power. The endless darkness that is in Ben is the core of darkness. With this core, the dean will be able to create an artificial predator with a strong ability. Ben asked what all this was for. The girl replied that it was to strengthen the Protoss guard and counter the many predators outside the city. The guy didn't expect to hear such nonsense. He couldn't believe that the girl believed this lie. After listening to the story, Bene stood up and buttoned his pants. He said that he had a friend at the academy and he had to verify Vanessa's words. The girl was surprised that the hero simply left and did not intend to kill her, despite the fact that she was a witness. The hero noticed Vanessa's look and asked why she was against his leaving. Did she really expect that Ben would finish what he started? Dirty thoughts flashed through her mind, and she replied sheepishly that she hadn't expected anything. Suddenly, a huge fist flew towards the guy, which Vanessa noticed, shouting at Ben to turn around. The guy turned around sharply and stopped the attack with one hand, as if he had been expecting it. It was the Arbiter who had regained his powers after the battle with Eliza. He was surprised that the guy repelled the attack so easily, but Ben reassured him by replying that it wasn't that the Arbiter was slow, but that the hero was too strong. A purple aura was concentrated around Ben, indicating that the guy had begun to use his ability to absorb the enemy's powers. The monster felt his strength leaving him. He hoped that his ability to restore energy would save him, but nothing could help him anymore. He began to dissolve into the air, and his helmet fell from his head, showing us the true face of the predator. Vanessa was surprised that the monster couldn't even hit the guy. Now she saw how the endless darkness worked. And not only the predator is weakening, all the plants around began to emit purple energy and at the same time die. After using the ability, all that was left of the demonic-level predator was his helmet, and the plants in the area withered away. An entire section of the forest was depleted, and Ben had now become much stronger, which amazed the girl. The guy turned around and started to leave, saying goodbye that he couldn't waste time here because the last day of the qualifiers was about to end. Vanessa jumped up and stopped the guy, saying that she couldn't go back to the dean after telling about him because he would kill her. Now she has nowhere to go, and she asked Ben to take her with him. The hero didn't expect to hear this from his former enemy. Now he didn't know what the right thing to do would be. At the same time, somewhere in Protoss, two figures were discussing the qualifiers. The girl said that in the first round, out of 33 people, only 8 remained alive. Count Dracula was disappointed with the results he heard. He expected more participants to pass the test. The director was quick to cheer up her master. She said that there was good news as well as bad news. 3 demon-level predators were destroyed in the competition area. The Count was interested in what was said and asked who these 3 fighters were who had achieved such success. The director replied that, according to the data, the first one to defeat the predator was the Ice Soul Eater Daniel. The second was the owner of the Hellfire ability, Adam. And the third was Ben, the owner of the ability of Endless Darkness, and also the most interesting contender in this competition. There was barely a smile on the Count's face. He was very interested in these people. The clock on the tower made a sound, signifying that the first stage of the qualifiers was over, and it was time to send the fighters back. A portal appeared in the forest where Ben and Vanessa were. The guy asked the girl again if she wanted to go with him, to which she agreed. A portal also appeared in the cave where Jenna lay unconscious. Eliza realized that time was up, and Ben never returned. In the Lost Places, a portal also appeared in front of the Ice Lord, and he walked slowly towards it. On the Swamp of the Dead, on a mountain of corpses, sat Adam, who was disappointed that time was up because he had not yet played enough. Suddenly, a strange figure with a tail appeared in front of him, which was covered with tattoo-like designs all over its body. Adam was delighted with the new opponent. He thought that he was very lucky to fight again before the portal closed. A voice sounded in the guy's head, saying that behind Adam there was a portal leading to the city. The firefighter was outraged by what was said. He did not understand what the predator wanted. The voice in his head grew louder and asked the guy to let him through the portal. Suddenly, Adam's entire body was covered in wounds from which blood flowed in streams. There was an explosion, and the fighter was torn into hundreds of small pieces. Adam fell to his knees from the sight he saw. It was an illusion. He began to choke from the piercing cold and fear that engulfed his whole body. The fighter stood up abruptly, trying to figure out who was standing in front of him. At first, he thought it was a demonic-level predator, but then he realized that they grow larger depending on the number of people they eat, and this one was built like a human. Is this really a spiritual-level predator? This level is achieved by predators who have eaten hundreds of their demonic-level relatives. This type is extremely rare. The hero was overcome with fear. He destroyed the bracelets that were on his hands. The guy understood that under no circumstances should he be allowed into the portal. Otherwise, the consequences are difficult to imagine. In the places where Adam had recently had bracelets, dragon tattoos appeared, which began to glow with a red flame. His hands caught fire and formed 2 fireballs, with which the guy rushed into the attack. The legendary predator assessed the strength of his opponent and thought that such power was quite great for such a boy. Adam brought his hands together to launch a powerful attack. A wave of fire flew towards the predator. The stream of dragon flame was so powerful that only charred stumps remained of the trees along the way, and the water instantly boiled. All that was left of the forest was a huge burning crater, and the guy was sure that he had defeated the enemy. This was his most powerful ability, and no matter who he fought, this technique would turn anyone into ashes. But suddenly a fog began to thicken around Adam, like hundreds of ghosts. One of them started flying into the mouth of an unsuspecting guy. The fog cleared, flying into Adam's body. His pupils turned white, and he lost his mind. In place of human pupils appeared the pupils of the predator that attacked the fighter. Now this body belonged to a legendary monster. 5 minutes later, all the heroes gathered in the arena of the sacred mountain. Adam was the last one to come out of the portal. He walked out as if nothing had happened. A screen appeared in front of the fighters in the arena, showing Count Dracula. He congratulated everyone on passing the first round, but asked the participants not to rejoice too soon. After all, the second test will be much more difficult. The remaining 8 people will take part in an elimination competition, and only 2 of the participants will become Protoss guards. All fighters will be given 1 month to rest, and when the time comes, the whole city will gather to watch the fight of the contenders. Ben thought that Jenny wouldn't have time to recover in a month, and Vanessa looked enviously at the girl who was hanging on the guy's neck. Count Dracula also added that the fighters had already been paired off and wished everyone good luck. The participants were surprised that they would not draw lots, and the organizers themselves chose who they would fight against. Everyone went to the screen to see their opponents. Eliza saw that her opponent was Jenna. She was upset because defeating a wounded opponent would not do her any honor. But in the semifinals, she will be able to fight Ben. He seems to have become stronger, but the girl thought that he had no chance against her. She also thought that if she suddenly loses, she will have to marry him. She turned around to look at the guy who was standing there, looking stupid and picking his nose. Eliza turned away abruptly, saying that the hero was watching her. But Ben didn't understand why she was angry with him. Daniel was also looking at the board. His opponent was Adam. Looking at the guy, he thought that he had a strong opponent. However, the fighter's energy was not the same as before. The predator in Adam's body turned around, sensing a strange aura emanating from the far corner of the building. This scent was calling him, and the source of this aura was far beyond the arena. Adam went outside. The monster inside him thought that he had been wandering for exactly 10 years. He traveled to every corner of the continent, but this aura was nowhere to be found. The only place the predator hasn't been is Protoss, a surviving city that he couldn't get into because of the huge wall and defenders. The predator felt that he was truly here, the source of the origin of his brothers and all abilities. A gift of light, a meteorite that fell to Earth long ago and is now housed at the Academy of Sciences. If the monster can obtain it, then he will finally surpass the spiritual level. He will achieve perfection, and then the whole world will obey him. After several days of qualifiers, a scandal was brewing in the Protoss Central Hospital. The doctor said in a frightened voice that they had done everything possible, but Jenny's health was not improving, and the doctors could do nothing more to help. In front of him stood the enraged heroes, who asked if the doctor had done everything, because they doubted it. Suddenly, Sarah appeared behind the robbers and saved the doctor by ordering the boys to calm down. She said there was one person who could help Jenna. The little demon immediately asked who he was. She wanted to bring him to the girl, but Sarah replied that it was impossible. Leia immediately clarified how strong this man was. They were already ready to move out. Lucy was disappointed that some doctor could be stronger than her. Sarah explained that this man is not a doctor. He is an S-rank guard, and also the most powerful person in the Protoss at the moment. His mental power is perfect, and if he agrees to cure Jenny, she will surely be cured. It's just a pity that he retired many years ago and disappeared without a trace. They tried to find him, but to no avail. Vanessa interrupted the crowd's conversation by saying that he was a master of mind control, 56 years old and 188 centimeters tall. His ability is a very ordinary N rank, but he brought it to perfection and became a master. After Kel's death, he could have controlled the Protoss, but he was never interested in power. He voluntarily gave up the right to rule the city, so the right to rule passed to Count Dracula, the next most powerful guardian. Now he lives on the top of a snowy mountain far away from everyone. Sarah was surprised by this information. How could the girl know it? The little demon looked at Vanessa with disbelief, because recently they were enemies. The girl replied that the dean has his own secret informants, so he knows everything about the guards. And now Vanessa is in Ben's squad, so there is no point in her lying. She also added that the guard has a strange character, and it is unclear whether he will agree to save Jenny. Suddenly, Ben spoke up. He said that he would find him and take the girl to the mountains. The guy promised that for her sake, he would seize any opportunity to keep her alive. After some time, the hero went to the top of the sacred mountain. He climbed the snowy slope for a long time, with Jenna on his back, whom he wrapped in his mantle. After some time, the heroes finally found the guard's house. They were exhausted and frozen from the cold. Suddenly, Ben saw a familiar animal peacefully building a snowman near the house. The animal also noticed the guy and wasn't particularly happy about the meeting. At that very moment, he forgot about his hobby and rushed into the house to escape from the one who had once frightened him in the cave. But suddenly a snowball fell in front of him, which scared the little boy. It was Ben. He immediately blocked the little healer's path, saying that it seemed like they had met before. The hero asked why Eliza's pet was here, since this was the home of a master of mind control. The kid trembled with fear. He couldn't do anything against such a formidable opponent. But then a man's figure appeared from behind the house and said that the guy not only broke into his house without an invitation, but was also hurting his pet. The figure came completely out from around the corner, and Ben was surprised to see the snow underneath it instantly evaporate. It was a Protoss S-rank guard, a master of mind control, Kevin. He wasn't happy to see our hero and said that the guy didn't belong there. Ben at that moment was amazed by the Guardian's strength. He felt this aura under which the snow was melting. It was as if the man was surrounded by a protective mantle, which, if touched, would immediately dissolve. Suddenly, a girl appeared from around the corner and asked her father who he was talking to and who had come to visit them. It was Eliza who was surprised that Ben came to her house. The hero was even more amazed by the fact that this was the girl's house, and this most powerful guard was her father. Sometime later, Ben and Jenny were in the man's house. The guy tried to persuade the guard to help the girl, because only he was capable of doing this. While Eliza watched this whole performance, she couldn't believe that Ben had come all this way for Jenny. The guy firmly stated that he would pay any price to save his girlfriend. Tired of listening to the hero's story, Kevin calmly replied that he refused to help him. Eliza chuckled. She didn't expect to hear any other answer from her father. Ben didn't stop. He wanted to know the reason for the refusal. The guy suggested that it might be because the Guardian's power would suffer if he helped the girl. Kevin replied that it was actually very easy to save her. But those two were nothing to him, and there was no point in him helping them. Now he will help them. Then everyone will start turning to him for help. But he doesn't want that. Suddenly, Eliza stood up for the heroes by asking her father if he would help Jenna if his daughter asked for it. Kevin was surprised, but the girl explained that Jenny was her rival, and she didn't want others to think her victory was undeserved. But the father was only surprised by why Eliza was on their side. A couple of minutes later, Kevin and the heroes were standing in the room. Jenna was on the bed. The man said that during the treatment, his ability would cause cell regeneration. Because of this, the girl's temperature would rise, so she needed to undress. Ben immediately blushed. Images of Jenny without clothes flashed through his mind. A couple of minutes later, the girl was completely naked. She was charming, but still unconscious. The master concentrated the energy in his finger and directed it towards the girl. He ordered her to obey and touched her head. At that moment, the girl began to come to her senses, and a green healing aura appeared around her. The guard had a strange feeling. At that moment, he felt that the girl was a gift. After a few minutes of treatment, Jenna began to come to her senses. Ben prayed that Kevin would be able to help the girl, and Eliza kept an eye on the guy so that he wouldn't peek. Jenna started sweating and moving her eyes and jaw. It looked like she was in pain, but it wasn't. The girl came to her senses and began to open her eyes. She felt that she was very hot, but at the same time very light. And then she saw herself completely naked, and she didn't know who did it. She screamed at the top of her lungs throughout the entire house. If it hadn't been for the storm, her scream would have been heard in the city. Jenna asked what they did to her and why she wasn't wearing any clothes, but Kevin decided to move away from the girl just in case. The master closed his eyes and said that Jenna was probably feeling better already. An embarrassed Ben, who was trying his best not to look, thanked the guard for his help. The heroes went to their rooms. Eliza showed Ben where he would spend the night, and the guy could finally rest. He turned to the girl and thanked her for helping him convince her father to cure Jenna. Eliza couldn't understand why the guy was so tense for some bodyguard. She asked him about it. Even she can't climb the mountain without the help of a phoenix, and Ben made this journey on foot, carrying the girl on his back. If a storm had started, he could easily have died. For her sake, the guy risked his future place on the throne. Eliza asked if it was worth it, to which the guy replied that it was worth it. He explained that Jenna is not just a bodyguard, she is his friend. The hero once had several friends, but they all abandoned him. And then he realized that those who care about him will always be on his side, even if the whole world rises against him. Jenna risked her life for Ben, and he did the same for her. Eliza turned around and hurried out of the room, saying that she would help them down the mountain when the girl got better. Ben thought that perhaps Eliza was jealous. Meanwhile, the recovered girl stood on the terrace and enjoyed the view of the snowdrifts. She didn't expect that her master would do so much for her. The realization of this brought her joy. Looking at the snowy landscapes, she remembered how he courageously carried her on his shoulders. Her fantasies were interrupted by a male voice. It was Kevin, who asked if the girl would catch a cold in such cold. Jenna turned to him and asked why he wasn't asleep yet. The master replied that he couldn't sleep, so he decided to drink tea with milk. Suddenly, he asked the girl if she knew who the gifted ones were. Anyone who is illuminated by a meteorite receives one ability, but there is a tiny chance that they will have two abilities. Such people are called gifted. Jenna is the second person Kevin can remember who had such a gift, and the girl seemed to understand what the master was talking about. With such wounds, an ordinary person would probably have died, but Jenna was able to survive. The man suggested that one of the protector's abilities is immortality. The girl was embarrassed because she was caught off guard. She replied that she cannot die while the person connected to her is alive, but at this time she is in agony. The master became increasingly interested in Jenna's ability. He wanted to know who this person was. The blonde replied that the ability itself chooses who will become it. It is directly connected to him. The girl senses when this person is in danger and can even sense his location. And since Kevin saved her, she will answer who it is. But this secret must remain between them. But in return, Jenna will have a request. She asked the master to become Ben's mentor. Kevin wasn't very happy with what he heard. He replied that he was tired of teaching people and was too busy. Jenna looked away and quietly apologized. She didn't think before asking the master about such a thing. Kevin sternly said that he didn't want to teach him, but considering the lengths the boy had traveled to get here, he would do him one favor. The next day, a phoenix was soaring in the sky, flying quickly somewhere despite a strong storm. Ben was sitting on the bird with the master. He asked where they were flying. Kevin pretended not to hear and asked if the guy received the ability from the meteorite. There are many people in Protoss with abilities that are often similar to each other. Based on rarity, they are divided into ranks. There are only 5 of them, namely N, R, SR, SSR, UR. Ben has 2 abilities. UR rank Endless Darkness and SSR rank Thunderclap, but they are not his innate abilities. So today, the hero will gain his own ability. Ben realized that they were heading to the Academy of Sciences right now, and that would be a good time to find out more about the Dean. After some time, the hero and Kevin flew to the doors of the Academy of Sciences. But then they were met by security, who ordered them to stop and say why they wanted to visit this place. The master sighed and said that he hadn't been in society for a long time, since people no longer recognized him. One of the guards shouted that if the 2 men didn't need anything, they should get out of here. The academy wasn't a place for casual strolls. Suddenly, he lifted off the ground and rushed into the air. The guard could not understand what happened to him. Their body didn't obey, and the whole squad began to levitate in the air as if there was no gravity beneath them. Their minds were with them, but their bodies were not. One of the guards was surprised that the man did nothing to lift them into the air. He just looked at them and didn't move. Ben was also amazed by this skill, because Kevin did not use any skills but just stood there. But the guy understood what was going on. He felt the aura he saw when he first came to the master's house. The power of the mind filled the space as if it were alive. It's no wonder the snow didn't touch it. Suddenly, an old man appeared on the threshold, who recognized this unique aura, because it can only belong to one person. It was the Dean, who was surprised to see Kevin here, since the man had not been interested in anything related to the city for a long time. The master answered the old man that his friend had not yet awakened his ability, and he thought that the Dean could help with this. Kevin looked at Ben and ordered him to say hello to the Dean of the Academy of Sciences. The old man was surprised that the hero was a friend of the strongest Protoss Guardian. He wondered how he could find him if the master lived far away from everyone. The blind man understood that the boy had killed the god of thunder and kidnapped Vanessa, and he surely knew that Dean was pursuing him because of the core of darkness. He also noted that it would not be easy to deal with Ben if Kevin supported him. The hero came closer and said that he heard that there was a meteorite in the academy that could awaken abilities. He would like to see it. The Dean coughed and firmly stated that he could not show it, because every use of the meteorite must be agreed upon with Count Dracula, and the gray-haired man had no personal right to dispose of it. And since Ben is a friend of Mr. Kevin, the old man could put in a good word with the Count. Endless darkness began to thicken around the guy. He decided to solve the problem in a bad way, since nothing worked out in a good way. But suddenly a slight breeze blew next to him, and he saw the master, who was already standing near the Dean. The old man was amazed by the man's speed, and was afraid of what would happen next. Kevin looked at the Dean with a dark look, and in a grave voice ordered to let them through, because the old man would not contradict him. The Dean's mind told him that it was better not to oppose this man. The blind old man smiled sweetly, and asked the guests to follow him. The trio walked along the long corridors of the academy. Ben was already beginning to doubt that they were going in the right direction, but the dean reassured him, saying that even though he was blind, he knew the academy like the back of his hand. The hero thought about how impressive the security system here was, because they had already passed 4 checkpoints, and the presence of the dean was required before each one. If not for him, they would hardly have passed. Moreover, the closer they are to the meteorite, the more the endless darkness reacts to it. The old man stopped. The meteorite was behind this door. He asked the heroes to listen to his instructions when they went inside. The metal door slowly opened, and the heroes entered the room where the legendary artifact was located. In appearance, it resembled an ordinary stone to which various cables were connected. It was the first time Kevin had seen a meteorite with his own eyes, so he asked the dean if it was really the same artifact. Ben calmly said that it looked like an ordinary stone that didn't represent anything special. The master turned to the boy and began to scold him for not listening to him when Kevin was talking about the meteorite. While the couple was arguing, the dean thought that before, light and darkness were whole and attracted each other, and when Ben came into close contact with the core of light, it could react. If the boy loses himself, the meteorite will merge with him, and when over time his strength is restored, the old man will be able to fulfill his dream and create an army of predators with abilities. And all this thanks to Kevin, who himself brought the core of darkness into the hands of the dean. His thoughts were interrupted by a punch that hit the guy right in the face. The master beat the bewildered Ben for flying in the clouds and not listening to his elders. After the lecture, Kevin asked the dean to activate the meteorite. After some time, the cables under the meteorite became electrified, and the stone itself, due to electricity, began to emit a bright yellow light. Kevin was curious about what ability Ben would receive, and the dean hoped that this ability would be N rank. The bright divine light blinded the hero. He increasingly ceased to see the source of light itself. After the meteorite was powered down, Kevin asked Ben if he felt any changes in his body. The guy replied that, except for the fact that his eyes hurt from the bright light, everything was the same as before, and he didn't feel any abilities. He turned to the old man, saying that apparently Dean did not want the hero to receive a new ability, and therefore led them to a fake meteorite. The blind man was stunned by the boy's insolence. He shouted that it was not his fault, and that if Ben uses the meteorite once, it does not guarantee that he will receive new abilities. The guy continued to pretend to be a fool, and said that he still didn't feel anything, and that the stone was apparently a fake. The old man wasn't as stupid as he seemed at first glance. It wasn't for nothing that he was the dean of the Academy of Sciences. He assumed that Ben probably had a rare ability, which is why he didn't want to show it. The guy said that they were leaving. He suggested to the mentor to go to a nearby place where they make excellent tea with milk. These words pleasantly surprised the master. He replied that he only drinks tea with sugar. Ben also added that they would order coconut pudding. The old man was furious at the hero's impudence. He wanted to kill him right now despite the fact that the guy was accompanied by his best guard. When the heroes turned their backs on the old man, he took out a hidden blade from his cane. The dean thought that Kevin wouldn't have time to react if he struck right now. He pulled the sword from his cane and swung it to kill the unsuspecting boy. But suddenly he froze in place and could no longer move. Kevin asked the old man if he had forgotten what it was like to cross the master's path. Realizing that he had lost, the dean trembled with fear. He knew that the guard was very strong, but he did not think that he was so strong. Having apologized, the old man put his sword back in its sheath and decided not to detain the guests any longer. Ben was horrified by the amount of rage he saw in Kevin's eyes. He understood that if Dean hadn't retreated, he would be dead now. Kevin looks harmless, but he has a huge amount of power hidden inside him. So this is what he is, the most powerful man of the Protoss. After the incident at the academy, our heroes were heading home on a huge phoenix. Kevin drank his favorite milk tea that Ben had promised him. The guy was surprised how the master drank a whole glass of tea in one gulp. After all, he really loves this drink. The guardian turned to the hero and said that now they were alone, and Ben could demonstrate the ability that the meteorite had given him. Kevin quickly figured out the guy. The hero did not want to show his new ability in front of the dean, so he fooled him. The ability had just awakened, and Ben didn't know if he would be able to demonstrate it, since he had never used it before and didn't know what it did. Kevin waved his fingers and told the guy to stand still and not move. He decided to penetrate his mind and see for himself what kind of ability the boy had received. The master concentrated to find the place where she was hidden. Inside the boy's mind, he saw hundreds of demonic eyes that were watching him. Kevin suggested that the location where Ben's ability is hidden is connected to an evil spirit. The ability to control evil spirits is extremely rare, but its rank depends only on the rank of the spirit. Suddenly, he noticed a sinister creature watching him. The master turned around and saw that the monster was huge. The man demanded that the spirit tell him his name and show himself to him. The monster was colossal in size. Its voice echoed throughout the entire space, and its name was Asura. Ben was tired of standing in one place and not moving. He was impatiently waiting for the master to finish his ritual. Opening his eyes, Kevin said that the boy was very lucky. Ben was delighted by such words and suggested that the meteorite gave him the ability of the gift of light. The master only chuckled, because this ability is a treasure of the Protoss. But the guy's ability is also extremely rare. It is not only strong, but also associated with evil spirits, so Kevin lingered in the guy's mind and taught the demon a lesson. This ability has SSR rank, and it is called Spirit of Asura. Ben expressed disappointment at the simple name of his new skill, to which the master replied that it was a great name. He also added that this spirit is extremely strong, as are his thoughts. If you resort to his help, then he can rebel against Ben. Therefore, unless absolutely necessary, the master advised the guy not to use it. A month has passed since Ben awakened his new ability, and today all the Protoss inhabitants are climbing the sacred mountain to get to the arena. After all, this is the most important day of the year, but not only because of the final competitions. What's more important is that in addition to the contenders themselves and the spectacular fights, there will also be them. S-rank Protoss guards will be present in the arena. 2 guards had already arrived at the show. It was Count Dracula and the director of the competition. The audience was delighted to see such people in person, as they had only seen them on television before. The director asked why the Count had arrived so early. After all, he was the most important person in the Protoss, and it was common for him to be a little late. The ruler drank wine the color of blood, the same as his robe. He answered the girl that he does not like to wait. It reminds him of waiting for the moon to appear from the clouds. Suddenly, the Count heard something move above him. He immediately realized that someone was sitting on top, because it is difficult to remain still while sitting on a canopy. The fabric boiled like boiling blood, and the Count's crown appeared from it. When he got up, he noticed Kevin, and said that he expected to see him here, despite the fact that the old master was not interested in such events. The Count suggested that it was probably because his daughter was taking part in competitions. Kevin remained calm and answered the Lord that this was not entirely true. There's a special offer at the tea shop today, and they also have giant pearl milk tea. The man offered the Count a try, but he declined, saying that sugar accelerates aging. Kevin was indignant and advised to live in the present, because the Count and the master were the same age, but the Lord looks younger because he takes care of his appearance. Suddenly, the men heard the sound of heels. It seemed like someone was approaching the arena. It was a woman dressed in a red dress with a large neckline, and pearls sparkled on her neck. Coming closer, she asked what her old friends were chatting about, and it seemed the headmistress was not happy with the lady's appearance. It was the leader of the Milky Way faction, Archangel Mary, and she was wondering if the warriors were discussing who, besides her son, would become the new protector of the Protoss. Grinning evilly, Director May asked if the woman was confident in her son, since it was unknown how her presence would affect him. Mary said she was his mother, and her presence would not harm her son, to which May sarcastically replied that she had once abandoned him with his father, and he would hardly be happy to see her. The Count and Kevin, watching the spectacle, simultaneously wondered why these women always quarreled. Mary got really angry and ordered the headmistress to keep her mouth shut. After all, May is nobody to her, and she doesn't dare judge her. The girls exchanged dark glances, which showed hatred towards each other, after which May replied that she simply decided to remind her of what she had done. They raised a shout throughout the Colosseum. One said that the director had so much work that he could not get a promotion to S rank. The second asked what was wrong with that, and was Mary really proud of her rank? The men just peacefully listened to these shouts and remained silent. One of the viewers asked her friend why the two were arguing, to which she replied that she only knew the rumors that were circulating about Mary. They say she abandoned her child and seriously ill husband to become the leader of some faction. Many in the city call her a sellout. Besides, she doesn't seem to have any abilities, and she got her S rank with Kel's help. The girl felt sorry for Daniel because he was so handsome, but had such a cruel mother. Suddenly, a guy's voice was heard from behind them, who had only heard the word beautiful in their conversation. It was Michael, an S-rank guard, the personification of the 7 sins. He asked the girls if they had talked about him. Suddenly, the girl felt a heartbeat in her head, which came from the handsome man. At that very moment, she felt her heart beat faster and she felt hotter. She was overcome with passion, and unnecessary thoughts began to arise in her head, which made the girl feel uneasy. The girl's friend didn't understand what was going on, and it seems the spectators sitting nearby also noticed that something strange was happening. And the guy just smiled, thinking that the girl was still very lustful. Suddenly, a female voice behind him told him to stop bullying the girl. He turned around to see his old friend and asked if she wanted to experience real pleasure. The heart that made the ex-girlfriend beat in agony crashed into the face of an unknown person and broke without having any effect. S-rank guard paladin, a sweet girl with purple hair, holding a sword in her hands and dressed in knight armor. She told the guy that his charms won't work on her, and he tries again and again but still doesn't understand it. The disappointed guy turned around and snapped his fingers, canceling the effect of his love spell to free the girl. He also wondered why his spell didn't work on the paladin. The charming girl asked the guy menacingly what he was whispering, and he awkwardly turned around and said that he was simply admiring the girl's beauty. Kathleen was a little embarrassed and told Michael to shut up. The guy also noticed the girl's slight embarrassment and smiled sweetly at her in response. An hour later, May asked for a moment of attention to deliver a ceremonial speech. She announced the start of the qualifying competition. The crowd immediately screamed enthusiastically, and the entire Coliseum buzzed. The headmistress asked the participants to enter the arena, and 8 contenders appeared on the battlefield. The crowd was jubilant because an unforgettable spectacle awaited them. All the participants slowly entered the arena. Many were looking forward to this fight, while others wanted to finish the competition as quickly as possible. Ben was supported from the stands by the girls who were on his team. The guy wanted to wave to them, but then the little demon shouted that if he lost, he might not return home. This phrase confused the hero. This was not the kind of support he expected. Ben asked Jenna where Sarah was now, since she wasn't in the stands with everyone else. The girl replied that she couldn't come because she was on duty at the academy. The guy thought that most likely the dean deliberately kept her at work because he knew that the girl was his friend. It wasn't just Ben who came to cheer for. Daniel's mother saw her son and thought about how much she missed him. Their eyes met, the cold gaze of the son and the admiring gaze of the mother. The woman was glad that her son looked at her. They hadn't seen each other for a long time, and perhaps he had already forgiven her. But Daniel turned away as if he didn't see anything, and his mother chanted from the stands that he would succeed because she loved him. May began to explain the rules to the participants. Firstly, the opponent must either lose consciousness or be immobilized for 10 seconds. Secondly, he must admit defeat. If a participant's life is in danger, the headmistress will interrupt the fight. Ben started yawning while listening to the rules. He asked if it was time to start the fight. He was tired of showing off his abilities. Jenna was worried because the guy looked tired. Maybe he didn't get enough sleep. Kevin was also worried, but for a different reason. He assumed that the hero was tired because he did not listen to the master's advice. The headmistress announced the first battle between the owner of the Endless Darkness technique and the Protoss warrior James. The contenders entered the arena and prepared for battle. The gong sounded, announcing the start of the duel. A little boy in the stands asked his mother if the man in the cloak was strong, to which the woman replied that he was a frequent guest at the qualifiers, and that he was the strongest among ordinary people. The warrior in armor, warming up, said that he had been participating for exactly 5 years, and each time he had encountered a very strong newcomer as an opponent. He thought that this time he would be defeated by the new prodigy, Daniel, but strangely enough, the gods sent him Ben as an opponent. The hero fell asleep on the move, and the warrior speaking to him declared that his ability would overcome the endless darkness. At that moment, Ben's eyes glowed purple, and he replied that he would not use infinite darkness this time. James was outraged by the guy's impudence and replied that he was not afraid of absorption, and besides, Ben had acquired the hero's ability only recently. That's why he decided to start the attack first, shouting at the hero that he couldn't handle him because the warrior was already seasoned in battle. And suddenly James disappeared. He moved so fast that he was invisible. Some viewers were amazed, while others had already seen this ability. It was called the Flying Dragon. The guy was running around Ben at such a speed that it was impossible to follow him with the naked eye. There are 2 ways to absorb energy with infinite darkness, either when the enemy is dead or unconscious, or when he needs to be captured. But James was so fast that it seemed impossible to catch him, so he was confident that victory would be his. Ben didn't even watch his opponent. He just stood and yawned in the middle of the arena. James stopped behind the guy and realized that this was the best moment to attack. Suddenly, the hero turned around, and 1,000 eyes appeared around him, looking straight into the warrior's soul. The guy jumped back without striking. From the outside, it looked like he was simply retreating. His whole body was covered in sweat. It was an animal fear of the abyss that he saw with his own eyes. The spectators were shocked. They did not understand why the battle-hardened warrior retreated and gave in to a newcomer. There was only fear in James's eyes. He saw something that filled him with horror. For just a moment, he was surrounded by 1,000 eyes that pierced him through and through. The guy thought he was imagining it. The hero looked weak, and therefore the warrior did not understand where he got such fear of his strength. Ben grinned and asked why he had given up. The crowd raised a howl. They began to shout for the warrior not to be afraid, and most of them came here to see how he became a guard. James knew that if he gave up, his image as a brave man would be destroyed, and all his fans would turn their backs on him. So he decided to take a risk and use his trump card. He wanted to leave it for Daniel, but first he needed to win this fight. Ben was tired of waiting. He understood that he was much stronger than his opponent. All this time, the guy provoked the enemy to attack. James got angry and only replied that the hero would defeat him before he could blink. He moved from his place with such speed that only jumps were visible in the arena. This ability was called supersonic rebounds. The downside of this skill was that the stones would start to crumble if you overdid it, but otherwise the technique was excellent. He aimed his blow towards the hero and was sure that now he would not be able to dodge. Ben turned around and stopped the enemy's attack with one blow, telling him that he was tired of waiting for the warrior to jump. Broken to dust, James could only think that this was the 6th time he had lost to a newcomer. The stunned spectators watched the spectacle and did not understand what had happened. Ben defeated the warrior with one blow and didn't even use the endless darkness. This fight seemed to be won without a chance. Flashing his smile, the hero said that it was all because he had reached B rank in the past month. The director declared Ben the winner, and he yawned as he headed towards the exit of the arena. Kevin watched the guy and understood that although the hero did not show it, he was very depressed. This was an indicator that Asura would soon rebel. Still, the guy couldn't resist the temptation to show off his new ability. A few minutes later, the arena was empty. The little demon was reading the schedule of upcoming fights. The next fight was between Jenna and the owner's fiancée, Eliza. Two of the contenders were watching the beautiful girls from the stands and chatting among themselves. The warrior with the sword asked his opponent who he thought had the best chance of winning, to which the guy with the mohawk replied that it was hard to say, but both girls had an equal chance. Eliza told her opponent not to give her any breaks just because her father helped Jenna. The girl agreed and replied that now she would fight with full force. After all, she was the guard of the future king, but often did not give her all. She looked up at the stands where Ben was smiling and supporting the girl, wishing her luck in the fight. Jenna reminded herself that the hero had always bravely rushed into battle when they were in danger, helped her when she was in trouble, protected her when she couldn't stand up for herself, and it was he who carried her to the top of the mountain when she needed help. That's why Jenna wants to prove to her master that she is worthy of being his bodyguard. Eliza smiled and asked the girl to show all her strength in order to find out which of them was stronger. The fight began, and the king's guard, without waiting for her opponent, raised her hand up. Suddenly, a huge piece of earth began to rise from the ground, which frightened Eliza. The spectators also did not expect to see such a spectacle. They looked in surprise at the stone slowly rising from the ground. The king's bride was stunned that Jenna could do such a thing. The girl lifted almost all the land from the arena square into the sky. Ben was worried about his guard, because lifting such a huge piece of earth was beyond her capabilities, and most likely she would not be able to handle it. Kevin calmly sipped his tea and thought about Jenna's powers. He understood that this was her maximum, and apparently she decided to end the fight with one blow so that Ben could see her victory. But he was confident that Eliza would be able to withstand such a blow. The bride also understood that the girl had put all her strength into this move, and although the area of land was huge, she would have time to dodge. Jenna levitated in the air, controlling the earth, and at that moment she increased gravity 100-fold. Eliza felt as if the whole building was pressing down on her. It didn't allow her to move anymore. She fell to the ground and realized that the girl had figured out her plan and had increased gravity so that she couldn't move, and admitted defeat until the boulder fell. Suddenly the block began to move. It was a meteorite strike. Under the force of gravity, the stone began to move towards the ground. At great speed, he flew straight at the head of Eliza, who was chained to the arena and could not move. The meteor crashed to the ground with such a roar that it seemed the entire Colosseum would shatter into tiny pieces. The boulder broke into small pieces, and they flew at the spectators, who were trying to protect themselves from this colossal blow. No one believed that the girl survived after such a thing. Ben looked at the sky and worried about Jenna, and Kevin at that moment was worried about his daughter. The dust from the impact began to clear, and all the spectators could not believe their eyes when they saw the silhouette of the king's bride. Eliza stood up and began to caress herself. She was charming and moaning, repeating that strong and fierce blows were her favorite and how pleasant it was for her now. Kevin realized that the girl had teamed up with the macho rhinoceros, and that during the union she had adopted both his strength characteristics and his manner of communication. Eliza continued to get worked up and begged Jenna to hit her again. All the guys in the stands enjoyed the sight of the warrior. Not only did she survive, but she also provoked her opponent. Eliza regained consciousness and noticed that she was unharmed. The girl did not expect to see such a stunning blow. She also didn't expect gravity to return to normal right before the impact, otherwise the rhino wouldn't have saved her. The girl thought that Jenna saw that the bride wasn't going to give up and allowed her to dodge. However, the king's guard froze in the air, unconscious. After such a blow, she had no more strength left, and so she can no longer hold herself in the air. The exhausted girl began to fall headfirst onto the arena, and at that moment she was unable to help herself. The spectators were stunned. Her friends understood that if they didn't help her now, she could crash. Suddenly, Ben jumped from the stands to try to catch Jenna. Confident in his abilities, he promised that he would not let anyone harm the girl. He barely managed to catch her, telling her not to risk her life for some competition. Together, they landed near the crater left by the meteorite, and the crowd breathed a sigh of relief. The director stated that since Jenna could no longer fight, the outcome of the round was obvious. The girl's friends were upset because she trained for so long and was very close to winning but still lost. May began to announce the winner, but at that moment Eliza interrupted her. To everyone's surprise, she raised her hand and said she gave up, and Jenna won this round. She added that if the defender had not weakened the gravity, the bride would not have coped and lost. Kevin smiled. He was proud of his daughter and what she did. Ben looked at Eliza and thought that she preferred losing to an easy victory. Apparently, she was very proud. But suddenly, at that moment, the hero felt someone pulling him by the collar. It was Jenna, who was completely exhausted, wondering if she had won. The hero smiled sweetly at the girl and replied that she had won, and he was very proud of her. Overjoyed, Jenna grabbed the guy and hugged him tightly, thanking him for his support, while Ben was very embarrassed by what was happening. Eliza, watching the cute couple, trembled with envy. It seemed that this hurt her feelings. She got angry and screamed at the two of them to come over and control themselves. Jenna's friends smiled and realized that the girl was jealous of him, and Vanessa envied such a warm hug because it must have been very nice. The director declared Jenna the winner and called a 1-hour break to allow for post-fight restoration work to be carried out on the arena. After some time, Ben was sitting with the girls and discussing their fight. They bought some cool soda to catch their breath. The guy told the warriors that they shouldn't fight over some competition. Eliza was upset by her defeat. She apologized to the hero for dropping out so early and not being able to fight him. The girl had long ago realized that she was not his equal and would not defeat him. Therefore, she was not against Ben taking the throne, and Eliza also began to talk about an engagement. But at that moment, an old man appeared behind the heroes. It was the dean, who noticed that the guy was quite successful with women. Ben was not happy to see his enemy. He told the old man that he would not believe it if he came to congratulate him on his victory. The blind man told him not to talk nonsense. He still remembered how the guy had humiliated him several times, and he wouldn't just let it go. This time, Kevin is not around because the dean made sure that he went to buy tea, so no one else can interfere with their fight. The old man took his sword out of his cane and pointed it towards Ben. He was sure that no one would protect the guy this time. The warriors were angry because of Dean Lee's insolence. Eliza began to say that the old man was taking too much liberty. According to the contract, she was Ben's fiancée and would not let anyone harm him. Jenna supported her. Our hero noticed that Dean had chosen an unfortunate location for the battle, because if he were killed in front of the spectators, Lee would disgrace the Protoss guards. He asked if the blind man was sure of his decision, since Count Dracula would hold him accountable. To which the old man replied that the Count was not the king of Protoss. He was only a deputy, and it was not for him to judge him. Suddenly, Lee's energy changed, and at that moment the boy realized that the old man had decided to go on the attack. Pointing his sword at the enemy, the dean shouted that the boy was too young to teach him. Lee tried to attack, but at that moment the heroes heard the sound of crossed swords. Something prevented him from doing so. The nasty old man was surprised that someone had blocked him. At first he thought it was the paladin, Kathleen, but then he remembered that he was no worse than her in fencing, and she had no reason to stop him either. Of all the Protoss swordsmen, besides Kathleen, Dean couldn't think of anyone who could stop his attack. It was Leia. She made it just in time, drawing her katana halfway out of its sheath and blocking the old man's attack. Lee knew this girl because he studied information about her, but he didn't think that she was so strong. Following Leia, the footsteps of the other defenders were heard. The little demon was glad to have a guest, because they had been looking for him for a long time. The pink-haired girl told the old man that they would not let anyone harm Ben. At that moment, someone called the dean. He recognized the voice of his subordinate. Vanessa turned to him and said that this time she would not be on his side, because he had destroyed many innocent lives for the sake of his selfish plans. The three protectors stood like a wall in front of the guy and promised that the old man would not kill him until they died. Eliza and Jenna also did not want to stand aside and also promised to protect Ben. The hero was surprised by the girl's resilience, and at that moment he realized that after a long time he had made real friends. Falling into a rage, Lee shouted that all these girls would die in vain because they were not his equal, and he was not afraid of anyone. Suddenly, someone's heavy hand fell on the blind man's shoulder, and his body began to tremble. In his head, he analyzed that such a silent step and touch, from which the heart stops, could belong only to one person. The dean was trembling, but he managed to turn to the stranger. He knew it could only be him, someone who loves tea with milk and never parts with their drink for a second. Kevin, the most powerful man of the Protoss, who asked the old man if he really wasn't afraid of anyone. He looked at Lee with a menacing gaze and advised him to watch his words. Meanwhile, in a small forest outside the arena, a little boy was calling for his brother. It was Liam, Adam's brother, who was wondering where the boy had been for the whole month that the kid couldn't find him. Adam was resting by the tree, and the little boy continued to pester him with questions. The predator inside the boy was trying to figure out how he should behave with this child in order not to give himself away. Suddenly, Liam's expression changed. Something about Adam really surprised him. He asked where the seal of hellfire was, because it only disappears when the guy is in mortal danger. Because Adam's ability was too strong, his mentor was worried about the boy's lack of control, which is why he found the best blacksmith who could seal the warrior's skills. The predator was distracted from his rest because he was already tired of listening to the child, but the boy continued to talk without stopping. Suddenly he froze, and the monster's mind became clouded, losing control of his body. For a second, the eye of the real Adam appeared from behind the monster's eye. The guy shouted at the top of his lungs for Liam to run, because the predator in his body was dangerous. Adam immediately grabbed his eye and seemed to come to his senses. The predator once again locked the boy in his own body. Now control belonged to him. The child was scared. He realized that this was not his brother, whom he knew. Liam asked who was now in Adam's body. There was a scream and the clearing was filled with blood. These were the last words he spoke in his life. Meanwhile, repair work at the arena was completed, which meant that the competition could continue. Kevin suggested to Dean that they watch the fights together and not disturb the young people, to which he replied that he was blind and would not be able to see them. The master looked sullenly at the old man again and ordered him to watch the fights. Lee immediately agreed. The director announced that the fight would take place between the head of the Iroquois, Mason, and the owner of Hellfire, Adam. Mason said he wasn't afraid of the guy. He'd heard that many wanted to see Adam fight. But the head of the Iroquois also considered himself a strong contender. After all, everyone would like to get his ability. It is one of the most amazing R-rank abilities. He promised that Adam would be shocked when he saw it. After finishing his monologue, Mason grabbed his hair and began to pull it upwards with all his strength. Suddenly, the mohawk was completely torn off his head, but the boy didn't seem to feel any pain. A new mohawk grew in place of the old one, and Mason also added that in addition to the fast hair growth, the mohawks were razor sharp, and that is why he uses them as a weapon. Kevin was surprised and said that it was a pretty good ability and asked the dean what he thought about it. The old man was not thrilled. Mason shouted, announcing that the fight had begun as he was about to use his deadly ability. A dry squall, and at that very second, hundreds of Iroquois, which looked like boomerangs, flew towards Adam. Suddenly, the arena became hotter. The predator directed a barrage of fire towards the enemy. The Iroquois leader was covered in burns, and his unique ability burned away along with his victory. Adam looked his enemy and calmly answered that he talked too much. Mason raised his hand and surrendered, his mohawk now looking like a scraggly bush. The spectators were shocked. This year, the fights were very spectacular. Almost all of them ended with one blow. The director declared the winner of this competition to be the owner of the Hellfire, Adam. The next battle will be between the Soul Eater Daniel and the Wind Sword Wielder William. After the next fighters were announced, May glanced at the stands. She was surprised that Mary was nowhere to be found, even though her son was about to fight. With the sweetest smile, the woman offered her son to go out for dinner after the competition, since they hadn't spent time together for so long, and besides, she had already booked a table at a good establishment. Mary exhaled. She was rehearsing her speech, which she did not like. The woman knew that Daniel was entering the arena right now, and this was a good opportunity to talk to him. She was still worried that he was angry with her, but Mary didn't know that the guy was standing next to her behind the wall. He silently clutched a piece of paper in his hand, which he stared at intently, and the woman was still worried because her son was about to be born. Daniel looked at the photograph, which showed him as a child sitting on his father's neck, and next to him was his smiling mother. Looking into the corridor, the guy decided to come up and just say hello, because it's not very difficult. Suddenly, someone slapped Mary hard on the butt, and she jumped in surprise. The woman blushed with excitement and embarrassment. She thought that her son had done it. The stranger began to lecture Mary, saying that she only thinks about the ungrateful child because he does not want to pay attention to her, and she does not need to spend so much time on him. It was the eldest son of the head of the Milky Way faction, Benjamin. The woman was furious at the guy's impudence and replied that he was still too young and had no right to talk to her like that. Mary turned to the impudent man and whispered like a snake that even though Benjamin's father was her boss, that didn't make her the guy's toy. The chief's son wasn't even scared, but simply slowly took a drag on his cigar. After exhaling smoke, he said that in just a couple of years his old man would be dead, and the woman should be more polite to him if she didn't want to lose her job. Mary understood that this was so. She turned around and told him that he was a vile scoundrel. Suddenly, the corridor became colder, and small snowflakes appeared in the air. The campaign manager's son was surprised that there was snow here, but Mary knew what was happening. Daniel appeared in the corridor, pointed his hand towards the impudent guy, and used the ability Icy Hurricane. Benjamin recognized the fighter and began to threaten him to stop the attack. But before he could finish speaking, an icy stream of wind lifted him into the air and carried him towards the arena. There was an explosion, and a brazen figure flew out of the entrance to the arena, landing right in the center of the Colosseum. He fell at the feet of Daniel's opponent, who was already tired of waiting for his rival. William didn't recognize the man at first, but then realized that he was the son of the faction that controls all energy sources in the Protoss. Benjamin didn't look so insolent anymore. Now he looked like a pathetic coward who had been beaten up a little. Daniel walked slowly towards the entrance to the arena, and at that moment Mary called him. Embarrassed, she told her son that she didn't expect him to stand up for her, which meant he did love his mother after all. The guy was silent for a moment and replied that it wasn't true. Benjamin was just blocking his way. After these words, the guy continued on his way. He entered the arena where the spectators were already waiting for him. The crowd was shouting his name. The handsome man was the son of an S-rank guard and the nephew of the former king. Everyone was already waiting for his fight. The girls in the stands wanted to see him more than anyone else because they thought the guy was very handsome and many were in love with him. William thought that Daniel was popular with the ladies. He was strong and handsome, but he still irritated the swordsman, who had already figured out how to defeat his opponent. William raised his hand and told the judge that he had a complaint. The boy pointed at Benjamin and accused Daniel of beating up an innocent spectator, a behavior that violated the principles of guards who protect their people. Therefore, he demanded that the judges disqualify Daniel for breaking the rules. The girls in the stands were furious. They considered the swordsman shameless because he decided to cheat instead of fighting fairly. William grinned, not caring what the crowd was shouting, since half of the internship costs were covered by Benjamin's campaign, and Count Dracula wouldn't dare turn a blind eye to that for the sake of some fighter. The king's viceroy bowed his head and said that he did not see Daniel beat the guy. He also asked the director if she saw anything. May confirmed that nothing had happened, so it was decided to take Benjamin to the hospital and continue the competition. William was deeply disappointed. He did not believe that the Earl was ready to ruin his relationship with his sponsor for the sake of some warrior. After hearing the judge's words, Daniel realized that everything was settled and began to prepare for the fight. The guy decided to act honestly. Since the swordsman uses a weapon, he will also use his weapon created from ice. Having created a huge ice scythe, Daniel decided to start the fight and ran towards his opponent. William was still stunned by the judge's decision and did not have time to react to the attack. He could only ask the guy to stop. But Daniel didn't listen to him. He dealt his blow to the swordsman, which he called an ice execution. The guy looked pompous and ended the fight with one attack, declaring that the fight was over. William had icy spikes sticking out of his chest and was shivering from the cold he felt. The girls in the stands chanted the handsome man's name, and his mother became embarrassed when she noticed that her son had finally grown up. The director announced the semifinals, in which Ben and Jenna were to compete. The guy looked at the girl and asked if she was ready for battle. The protector smiled sweetly and told the owner not to worry about her. Suddenly, she raised her hand and told the judge that she was refusing to fight. Jenna explained to the guy that they were not rivals, and besides, she had spent all her strength in the first battle and would not be able to fight. Ben decided that the girl was blatantly lying, and most likely she had planned to retreat a month ago when the opponents were announced. Jenna became embarrassed and replied that apparently nothing could be hidden from her master. She adjusted her hair and added that only 2 people can become guardians, so the girl wanted to ensure an easy passage to the final for the hero so that he could definitely become a guardian. The principal announced Ben as a finalist, which meant he would be promoted to guard. James was touched by this act. The boy envied the hero for being so lucky, since such a beautiful girl had let him win. May announced the next battle. It will be between the Soul Eater Daniel and the wielder of Hellfire Adam. The one who wins will become the guardian of the Protoss. The firefighter stood in the arena and warmed up. Then he raised his hands in the air. This surprised Daniel. He expected the guy to start attacking right away and not prepare for a fight. Suddenly, a huge column of fire flew out of Adam's hands into the sky, which was so powerful that the ground under the guy's feet began to crack. A pillar of flame rose high above the arena and began to take the shape of a dragon. Our heroes were amazed by this sight, and by the fact that the guy's ability had taken shape. Count Dracula didn't show it, but he was also interested in Adam's skills. He noticed that for a beginner, he had released too much energy. Daniel's face didn't show surprise. He was focused and confident that the firefighter had started with his trump card. The Hellfire took the form of a dragon, which was directed at the Ice Eater. Adam's body contained enormous power, and the Predator became curious about why the guy had sealed it. The battle began, and the huge fire dragon opened its mouth, and a red-hot ball of fire began to form in it. The spectators were intrigued. They did not expect to see such power, and were afraid that the fire would spread to them. May was also amazed by the guy's strength. She asked her master if she should stop the fight, since the spectators could get hurt, to which the Count refused. A column of flame erupted from the fire dragon's mouth, which was supposed to burn Daniel. The guy wasn't afraid of Adam's power, because he knew that he himself was quite strong. The Ice Devourer raised his hand, and at that very moment a high ice barrier rose in front of him. The 2 opposing elements collided. The dragon's flame crashed into the ice wall. From such a power of hellish fire, the barrier began to melt until it completely disappeared. The Predator in Adam's body chuckled. He knew that such a wall would not stop his attack. There was a monstrous explosion. The Colosseum shook, and flames covered the entire field. Frightened spectators tried to protect themselves from the flames that flew towards them. After the attack, the smoke cleared. Daniel coughed but was still alive, which surprised the Predator. All the clothes on the guy's body burned away. The nobleman declared that such a blow would not cope with his barrier. But besides this, Adam did not take into account 2 more things. Firstly, because of the barrier, the firefighter could not see everything that was happening on the field. Adam was surprised. It seemed he began to guess that the person in front of him was not the real Daniel. And secondly, thanks to the barrier, the nobleman was able to reach the enemy. Daniel launched a sweeping blow with his scythe, but the Predator dodged, saying that he had underestimated his opponent. His fist was hot and he was ready to attack. This time, the handsome guy would not get away. Adam shouted that this was the end of it and delivered a fiery blow to Daniel. The guy managed to dodge and land in the arena without much harm. Daniel spat out blood. A burn was visible on his face. After all, the firefighter was able to slightly injure his opponent. Seeing this picture, Mary realized that things were bad, because her son was very proud, and the fact that he was hit was unthinkable for him. Now Daniel was furious. His gaze clouded over as he prepared for another attack. Steam was coming out of the guy's mouth. He only quietly whispered that Adam wouldn't just leave here like that. The nobleman swung his weapon and delivered a chilling blow from a distance. Blade-like block was moving across the entire earth in the direction of Adam. But for the Predator, it was a trifle. He caught the blade with his hands just when it was supposed to hit him. From the fire that was concentrated in the guy's hands, the blade cracked and burst. Daniel was in shock. He couldn't believe that someone could stop his scythe with their bare hands. The nobleman knew that only an S-rank guard could do such a thing. But the Predator was worried about something completely different. He understood that right now he was using his own powers to stop the attack. He needed to be more careful because there were guards everywhere, and they could notice something was wrong. Kevin watched the fight with interest. He wanted to know more about Adam. The monster prepared to attack. Thinking that he had not infiltrated the Protoss to win the competition, he had specifically chosen Adam's body because he considered him to be the strongest participant. Daniel, blinded by rage, began to spin his scythe, preparing for his icy attack. But the Predator was also seriously angry, because it was not his plan to lose to some newbie. The attacks of the opposing elements once again clashed with each other to decide which of them was stronger. At that moment, Lucy was more afraid for Ben. She saw how strong both of his opponents were and was no longer sure whether the guy would win. Kathleen was also impressed by both semi-finalists and believed that they both deserved to win. After the attack, both fighters were already exhausted. The Predator did not expect such an outcome, but thought that it would even be better this way. After all, he won't be able to squeeze anything more out of Adam's body, and if he gives in, then no one will suspect anything and the monster will be able to calmly go about his business. After all, his relatives could not attack the Protoss before because of his guards, which include the strongest S-rank guards, of which there are only 10. 6 of them are here now besides Kel, who died. 3 more are missing, and if they are not present at such an important event, then something happened. The Gift of Light is now barely guarded. The Predator has no choice but to surrender and quietly disappear to obtain it. Such a chance cannot be missed. Adam turned to the judges and started to raise his hand. Daniel couldn't believe his eyes. The guy said that he had no more strength left and he was giving up. The words he heard shocked Daniel. He couldn't believe that after all the powerful attacks, Adam just gave up. The nobleman started yelling at the guy, asking him to show his trump card and not believing that he couldn't do anything else. In response, the Predator only grinned and said that since Daniel had survived the last attack, Adam had no chance of winning. Something was wrong here, and the Ice Eater realized it, because a fighter obsessed with battles cannot just give up. The monster inside Adam thought about how people don't understand that there's no point in trying if it's obvious there's no chance. He turned around and walked towards the exit of the arena, telling Daniel that he got off easy, so he was lucky and should be happy about it. The nobleman was not satisfied with this arrangement. He thought about how suspiciously the guy was acting now, because in the first round he had thought completely differently. His thoughts were interrupted by May, who announced the end of the fight. Daniel had won, which meant that he was now a guardian. The next battle will be the final one, in which 2 new guards, Ben and Daniel, will clash. At this moment, the hero was interested in why the nobleman helped him in the first round. Perhaps it was because of his relationship with Kel. After the fight, the Predator in Adam's body descended from the mountain. He was no longer interested in the fight because he had another goal. At that moment, he noticed that someone was following him from the arena itself. The guy turned around and asked what the unknown pursuer wanted from him. In front of him stood a tall man with a bag on his shoulder. He had overgrown hair and torn clothes. The unknown man firmly said that it was not Adam in front of him now, and asked who was now in his body. There was no point in hiding it anymore. The Predator asked how the stranger knew he wasn't Adam. It was all quite simple. It was the guy's mentor, S-rank guard Joseph. The Predator was surprised why the man did not expose him in the arena, since there were more guards there and he would have been in danger. But Joseph is here only alone. Apparently he came to die. Suddenly the monster received a powerful blow to the face. He did not expect such a response from the man. Due to the force of the blow, Adam flew back and began to fall off the cliff. Joseph, after his blow, ordered him to shut up. Falling down, the Predator was surprised that the mentor was hitting his student with all his strength. Joseph jumped with great speed towards the guy, forgetting about his bag which he was carrying on his shoulder. He ran and kicked his opponent in the stomach, saying that he and Adam had been through a lot. The force of the blow was so strong that the monster flew down the cliff like a bullet. He crashed powerfully into the ground, crushing all the stones that were beneath him. The mentor landed nearby, seemingly unfazed by the heights. Joseph was so fast that he landed faster than his bag, which was falling from the cliff, and he grabbed it in mid-flight, as if that was how it was all planned. The man ordered the Predator to leave his student's body. He took the guy by the leg and added that if the monster continued to hide in Adam's body, it would kill him. The Predator was shocked by the words spoken and replied that Joseph had gone crazy. The man barely smiled, saying that it was not the first time he had heard these words. Apparently, Adam often said this during training. The monster began to concentrate its power in its fist, around which a green aura appeared. He directed the attack at the mentor, ordering him to let him go. Suddenly, the man disappeared, and Adam fell to the ground. The danger for the Predator had passed. All beaten up, the guy began to get up. He didn't understand who attacked him, but it didn't matter anymore. After all, he will remain forever in his prison, where the souls of the people he once ate will gradually suck all the strength out of him. Rising to his feet, the monster thought it was time to hurry for the Gift of Light before the final competition came to an end. Meanwhile, the main fight was beginning in the arena. Daniel told Ben that he was already a guard, which meant he was one step closer to the throne. But it was too early to rejoice because Kel was a teacher and close person for the Ice Eater. That's why he wants to help him. But first, the hero must show what he is capable of himself. Ben understood why Daniel helped him in the first round. The nobleman simply wanted to make sure that the guy was suitable for Kel's place. So he decided to show all his power, and a dark aura began to concentrate around Ben. Black lightning began to appear in the air and struck the sky with a roar. Daniel was shocked by what he saw. He didn't understand how the guy managed to make the lightning black. Ben released all his rage in the form of lightning. His power could be felt even in the air. The spectators were surprised by what they saw. They felt a terrifying atmosphere that was building up in the arena. James felt that energy again, exactly the same as in their fight, as if someone was watching him. Dean Lee realized that this energy was similar to Asura, so that meant what kind of ability Ben had received. The old man asked Kevin if they had already summoned him. The master himself was surprised. He replied that they did not summon a demon, but he had no idea how the hero managed to use this power. Only one thing was clear. Ben was able to combine Azura's energy and the Thunder God's ability. The boy's eyes turned a frightening purple color, and he asked Daniel if he was disappointed now. To which the guy replied that the hero was indeed special, because in addition to the endless darkness, he himself had an ability. Ben was angry. A month ago, the nobleman considered him an unworthy opponent, but now everything was different, because in this competition, he would not use the ability granted to him. The fight began, and the hero attacked first, jumping off the ground with such force that it cracked. Having approached the enemy, Ben shouted that this time he would use his ability. Horrified, Daniel used one of his abilities, ice patterns, which created a wall of ice around him. But she couldn't protect him. The ice around the guy began to crack because it couldn't withstand such a strong blow. Ben struck with what was called spiritual lightning. The force was so great that Daniel's barrier couldn't withstand it and burst. The guy flew away from his opponent and thought that Ben had not been so strong in the first round, and besides, it was still unclear what effect his technique would have other than a feeling of intense anxiety. He noticed his cheek, from which blood was flowing. After all, the hero had managed to touch him. Suddenly, at the sight of his wound, Daniel felt a strange sensation as if he was being pulled inside. 1,000 eyes appeared around him. He did not understand what was happening because he was consumed by fear. Vanessa asked why Ben stopped, since now was a great moment to attack, and Leia noticed that he wasn't the only one who stopped. Both opponents froze on the battlefield. Suddenly, Daniel heard a voice telling him that his feelings were under control, and there was no point in him continuing to fight. Ben, who was of colossal size, appeared opposite him and advised the nobleman to surrender because he could not win. May suggested that causing fear and controlling the enemy's senses was Asura's ability, and the Count confirmed her words. But she didn't understand why Ben didn't summon the demon, since spirits are usually used for summoning. The Count raised himself up so he could see better, and said that Asura was an unusual spirit. The hero would not have enough strength to tame him. Moreover, if he summoned him, Asura could rebel against his master. Instilling fear is a passive ability of the demon, so the risk is minimal. By combining it with lightning, he strengthened his attack. One small wound was enough to ensure his victory. The Count was impressed that the guy had achieved such a result with minimal effort. He also realized that Ben was far from stupid, even though he seemed that way. The hero was already tired of waiting. He didn't understand the point of continuing to fight if the enemy couldn't move. Daniel asked why, having taken control of his body, Ben wouldn't take advantage and surrender for him. He also added that if the hero loses right now, it will only be because of his softness. Ben was surprised. He didn't understand how he could lose in such a situation. It seemed like the enemy had something planned. Suddenly, his legs became covered in ice, immobilizing him. But not only his legs, but also the entire arena was covered in ice. It was the icing technique. Ben looked around and saw that he was surrounded by walls of ice. He exhaled and called Daniel stubborn, because the hero gave him a chance to just give up, and he was making everything more difficult. The guy didn't expect it to come to blows, but Daniel froze the entire arena just to immobilize him. The nobleman did not react to his words in any way, but simply stood there motionless. The hero remembered that Daniel could not hear anything, because he had taken control of his senses. Suddenly, the Ice Eater said that Ben was the first, besides Kel, who was able to resist him. He recognized his talent. But the hero missed something. Ice. This is Daniel's sixth sense. The guy froze the arena to know Ben's location, not to immobilize him. Therefore, the hero needs to get ready, because the nobleman begins to attack again even without his senses. His hand shot into the sky, and the ice began to accumulate into one object. This was Daniel's most deadly attack. The ice gathered together to form a sword. It was the ice sword Excalibur. Mary was worried because her son had already received the position of guard, so why risk using this ability? Jenna was also worried, but for her owner, she was afraid that the guy would get hurt. The spectators were delighted to see the legendary sword. It was enormous in size, and its cold penetrated to the bones, lowering the temperature throughout the Colosseum. Ben was delighted with what he saw. He had underestimated Daniel, and it seemed like things were only getting more interesting. The ice around the hero's feet cracked. Such an attack couldn't hold him back for long, as he was still covered in black lightning. Ben declared that since the nobleman was fighting with full force, he would not give in either, and began to form a black ball in his hand. After some time, the ball increased in size and looked like a huge black clot of energy that was ready to explode. Without thinking twice, Ben launched the ball at his opponent to check which of them was stronger. Daniel also did not stand aside and pointed Excalibur at the hero. The spiritual realm and the legendary sword collided with each other. Both guys wanted to find out who was the strongest with this particular attack. But their strength was equal, which meant that both could suffer. Even Count Dracula and Kevin were surprised by what they saw. The sphere and the sword began to crack. Neither of them wanted to give in, and it was not clear which of the guys was stronger. There was an explosion, and it was unclear who had won. The spectators were amazed by such a powerful skill. But suddenly, something appeared in the sky. The purple energy began to gather into small balls, signifying that Ben would now absorb the energy with the help of the infinite darkness. Meanwhile, outside the Protoss arena, a green-haired girl watched the fight on the screen. It was Sarah, locked in the academy, greedily eating popcorn and thinking that if the guy wins, his rating will be very high. Suddenly, the girl felt a strong push that almost threw her off the chair. The jolt caused Sarah to spill popcorn all over herself, and she was very unhappy about it. But what happened? The girl thought it was like an earthquake. Suddenly, behind the glass, she saw the slain guards and a guy with red hair who looked like one of the competition participants. Adam walked forward. Not noticing the enemies, he felt that his goal was very close. Suddenly, he stopped. The guy realized that the fragment was behind this door. Coming closer to the door, he swung his fist to knock it down. His strength was so great that the metal door shrank like a sheet of paper with one blow. The barrier was destroyed, and the predator was in the room with the meteorite. Adam was happy that he had finally reached his most cherished dream. His goal is the gift of light. With its help, the predator will finally be able to surpass the spiritual level and become the crown of evolution. Of some unfamiliar person were heard behind the guy. It was one of the Protoss guards, B rank, who attacked Adam with the words that access to this room was closed to him. The predator saw the blade of the sword that appeared in front of his face, and he was surprised by such impudence of the man. Adam instantly grabbed the man by the face and slammed him into the wall, furious that this weakling was distracting him at such an exciting moment. The force of the blow was such that the mark from the guy's hand remained forever on the face of the dead defender. Sarah watched all this through the cameras. She was horrified by the fact that the fighter killed the B- rank defender with one blow. She understood that the unknown person had come for the meteorite, and even the commander-in-chief couldn't stop him, which meant the girl shouldn't try either. Sarah had only taken the job to get Ben to the dean, and she had absolutely no desire to risk her life for the old man's business. She was scared, so she decided to hide and pretend she didn't see anything. Meanwhile, in the arena, the warriors began to recover from the explosion of the sphere and the sword. Daniel felt his senses return, but he didn't know if it was because the fight was over, or because Ben had let go of control. But then he saw a familiar aura in the sky, which he had seen before. He became angry, and accused Ben of using the infinite darkness even though he promised to fight without it. The hero felt ashamed, and explained that this ability was passive, and he himself could barely control it. So as compensation, he returned Daniel's feelings to make things fair. Mary decided to leave the arena. She was angered by Ben's invincible strength. The woman understood that after the destruction of the sword, her son no longer had a chance of winning. She knew that the endless darkness did not obey the will of its master and absorbed energy on its own. So the hero not only won the duel, but also became stronger, and Daniel weakened. At this point, she considered the fight over and left, because she did not want to see her son lose. Suddenly, the heroes heard a strange sound, which was like a rumble. It could be heard throughout the city. Count Dracula and Director May were shocked. They seemed to understand what had happened. The dean asked Kevin in a trembling voice where the sound came from. Kevin replied that it sounded like the sound was coming from the old man's academy. A huge pillar of light was coming out of the roof of the academy, and it seemed like right now everything was going according to the Predator's plan. S-rank guards would arrive any minute, but unfortunately it would be too late. After all, what he was looking for was in his hands. The gift of light, the greatest treasure of the Protoss, which the monster had been looking for 10 years. Without thinking twice, he began to absorb the seemingly small fragment, which contained enormous energy. Suddenly, someone's hands formed a strange sign, pointing straight at the shard. It was Sarah who used the grip on the gift of light and sealed it. At that very second, the small fragment dissolved into thin air, as if it had never been there. Adam didn't understand where his gift went. At the very last moment, it disappeared. He became very angry and looked at the silhouette that stood at the entrance to the room. The guy was outraged that at such a moment the girl simply teleported the gift of light, and besides, he did not understand how she was able to survive, because he killed everyone in his path. She replied that she did not want to interfere in something that was none of her business, but as a Protoss, she could not stand idly by as the murder and theft of the greatest treasure took place. So Sarah decided to fight and not let the predator get him. The girl's words made him more and more angry. He asked again where she had teleported the fragment, but Sarah brazenly told Adam that it was none of his business. Suddenly, tentacles flew out of the guy's hands. This was no longer Adam's ability, but the predator's own, which was called hellish chains. The girl was surprised by the attack, because the guy had not used such a technique at the competition. The tentacles grabbed the girl by all parts of her body, and she realized that something was wrong with Adam's energy. It didn't resemble human energy. A second later, she was completely at the mercy of the monster, which completely enveloped her body with its vile tentacles. The predator said that he was giving the girl exactly 5 seconds, and if you didn't tell him where the core was, she would die of suffocation. Sarah replied that his threats would not change anything, because she understood what she was getting into, and besides, if the monster killed her, he would never know where the shard was. The girl placed a seal on the gift of light before teleporting it, a barrier blocking its connection with the outside world. And if the predator kills her, he can forget about searching for the treasure. Adam himself noticed that he no longer felt the presence of the core, so he decided to torture the girl, since killing her would not work. The grip of the tentacles tightened, twisting the girl's arms, legs, and neck. She screamed in pain, but she had no intention of giving up. Adam asked the girl again where she hid the shard, continuing to torture her. The girl just laughed in the monster's face, replying that he was somewhere he could never find. Leia was already running towards the academy because she knew that her friend was there now. She sped up her pace because she was worried about the girl, but at the same time she understood that everything would be fine since Sarah was on duty. Dean Lee also joined the chase, but he was worried not about the girl but about his priceless treasure. Suddenly Leia heard a strange squeak behind her. She turned her head to see what was there. Behind her flew hundreds of bats, Count Dracula's faithful companions. Leia saw that the king's viceroy himself and 2 S-rank guards had also arrived to help. Apparently something serious had happened. After these words, all the heroes rushed to the academy. A few minutes later, Leia landed at the entrance to the Science Academy, surrounded by the torn corpses of guards. She looked around the place, preparing for battle, but Sarah's body was not there. Suddenly, she heard the dean's cry. It seemed he had found the battle site. He was shaking and constantly repeating the same words about the gift of light, that it was his. Leia thought that the old man had gone crazy. But looking away from the old man, the girl saw someone else in the room besides the meteorite. It was Adam, lying unconscious and covered in his own blood. The old man continued to rave, and Leia quickly went down to the guy to interrogate him. She thought that the fighter would have problems because he quietly left after the fight to get here. But then the girl noticed a strange wound on the guy's body. It looked as if he had done it himself, but Leia didn't understand why. She lifted Adam up and sat him down and asked him to do her one favor. If the guy is still alive, then let him let Leia know about it. After these words, she slapped Adam across the face with all her strength. The fighter coughed, which meant he was still breathing, and the defender asked him where Sarah was now. An enraged old man appeared behind the girl, took out his sword, and simply asked where his core was. He didn't know what he was doing in his madness, but Leia managed to block his blow with her katana. The girl said that everything has its time, and let the old man wait until she finished interrogating the guy, and then they would talk. Lee was angry that this was the second time Leia had blocked his blow, and he also didn't understand how it was possible to put the discussion of the secretary's life on the same level with his gift of light. More figures appeared at the entrance to the room. It was the Count, who said that there was no need to fight because the surveillance cameras were broken. Adam is the only eyewitness, and if he dies, they will not be able to find out anything about what happened here. Looking at the seriously injured fighter, Dracula said that he knew who could cure the guy. After some time, the heroes arrived at the top of a snowy mountain. Adam struggled to open his eyes, and through the hazy haze he saw Kevin. His face seemed familiar to the boy, but due to the injury, he had difficulty thinking and understanding what was happening. Suddenly, the fighter jumped up and asked why he was there. The master replied that Adam was a worthy student of his teacher. With such wounds, an ordinary person would probably have died. But the guy survived. Apparently, life-threatening fights were nothing new to him. With difficulty moving, the warrior turned to get out of bed. He knew that he did not have time to lie around because the predator had sealed his teacher. But suddenly his body was overcome by a wild pain, reminiscent of lightning, running from head to toe. Adam fell out of bed and blamed himself for the fact that it was his fault that he couldn't defeat this creature. Kevin noticed that the guy was an exact copy of his teacher. Suddenly, someone extended a hand to Adam and asked him not to worry about his mentor, because Joseph was strong and would not die just like that. The guy was surprised because in front of him, he saw one of the strongest people of Protoss. It was Count Dracula who asked to tell the boy everything he knew, and he would take care of everything himself. Meanwhile, somewhere in the forest outside the city, a meeting was taking place. Sarah stood in the clearing and told someone that it was time to leave, because if they hesitated, the guards would catch them. She heard a sweet, sexy voice in response, which said that apparently the plan had failed since the guy was irritated. The girl turned around and was surprised that he had changed his body. It was a spiritual predator, the sorceress Jessica, who was interested in why the guy had possessed the girl, since he could have chosen her body. A spiritual-level predator, Dark King Steve replied that this body was the only one who knew the location of the gift of light, so it could not be left there. Steve turned around and ordered the sorceress to leave, as they had very little time left. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound in the bushes. Someone called the monsters and asked him to wait. A hairy hand of a creature appeared from behind the tree, hurrying to meet them. It was a way-level ghost predator. The monster was worried that its allies had decided to abandon it, and that it would then get lost and not find them. Meanwhile, in Kevin's hut, the heroes discussed the incident at the Academy of Sciences. Adam told Count Dracula all about the ghost-level predator that could inhabit other bodies. The governor hadn't encountered one like that in a long time, but unfortunately he couldn't leave the city because power was now in his hands. Therefore, he entrusted the task of rescuing Sarah to the paladin Kathleen and the S-rank guard Michael. The Count ordered the girl to be returned safe and sound, and the predator to be killed. The paladin jumped up and swore on her life that she would complete this task. Michael finished reading his book and said with a smirk on his face that he understood the assignment. Suddenly, the door to the room swung open, and Ben appeared in the doorway. He responsibly declared that he was also joining the task. Leia supported him and also wanted to help. Sarah was the hero's bodyguard, so the guy considered saving the girl his duty. Leia fixed her hair and stated that Sarah was her friend, and so she would not leave her in trouble. Kevin wasn't happy about Ben's announcement. Eliza was the guy's fiancée, and the master was afraid that his entire family would be guards and would always have to be watched. The old man wasn't thrilled either. He told the hero that his opponent was a spiritual-level predator, and the guy wouldn't be able to defeat him. Ben answered the old man that all the dean's thoughts were only about the core, and apparently he was not at all interested in the girl's life. Kathleen told the guy that this task was not that difficult, and she could handle it herself. There was no need to risk her life again. Kevin stood up for Ben and said that there was no need to suppress the guy's enthusiasm once again. Besides, the hero became a guard, and such a sortie would be training for him. He turned to the Count and asked if he was against it. The Viceroy became embarrassed and replied that no, which meant it was decided that Ben and Leia would go with the guards. Dracula was frightened by Kevin's gaze. He thought that the master was angry with him, and to make amends, he would need to send the man a discount coupon for the tea shop. Then the Viceroy turned to Ben. He announced that due to the rush, they would do without the ceremonies of initiation into the guards, so now the Count names the boy a guardian and protector of the Protoss, and also assigns the hero an A rank. He will be in the 7th squad. Adam reflected on the fact that he had not expected Ben to be able to defeat Daniel. The hero was delighted with his initiation, and the fact that he would be able to go on a mission. The city door opened and 4 guards set out on their mission. The fighters had to work as a team and save Sarah and the Gift of Light. During the investigation, it was discovered that the enemy was heading this way, and the team rushed in pursuit. The road was familiar to Ben, because after the first round he studied the map of the area. In addition to the area marked Unexplored, there was another marked No Entry. Anyone who entered this territory did not return alive. This place was called the Guards' Cemetery. Kathleen was surprised that the hero was able to remember this unremarkable road, because there are thousands of routes shown on the map. Michael told the hero that he was a very interesting person, since he went to study the map in his free time. Ben replied that this was a habit from a past life, but now they needed to catch up with the enemy because he was trying to hide from them. Meanwhile, the trio of predators walked through the forest. Wei became bored because he was promised that there would be fights, and that is why he went with them. Jessica informed her allies that, judging by the signal traps, there were 4 enemies, and they would soon catch up with them. But after a couple of seconds, she realized that there were 5 opponents. Wei was pleased with this news and asked permission to detain them, as the monkey was already tired of waiting for a fight. Steve turned around and replied that Jessica would take care of the enemies, all because the predator will have another, more important task for Wei. After some time, the monkey listened to his owner, and he did not like the plan. Wei became angry when he heard the proposal and said that Steve was just using him. The Dark King replied that he needed to quickly find out information about the location of the Gift of Light, so the monkey would have to carry it so that he could concentrate his energy on the search. They walked forward. Steve told Wei that when they reached the guard's graveyard, they would be safe. Meanwhile, the pursuing heroes stopped because Ben noticed something. It was an ambush, and right now a huge boulder was flying towards the hero. Leia was already running to help the guy, saying that she would deal with the obstacle. The girl delivered 30 blows with her blade in a few seconds. The stone shattered into pieces and did not cause any damage to the heroes. Leia ordered the offender not to hide and to come out. Someone jumped from the tree and landed right in front of the girl. It was the charming Jessica, who just wanted to say hello to the guards. She raised her green eyes and declared that in order to pass, the guards must pay with their lives. The girls didn't like Jessica's insolence and said that she would pay with her life for interfering. Ben stepped forward so that the girls wouldn't fuss, because the predator just wanted to delay them and probably had more traps hidden. Therefore, the hero came up with a new plan. He had to hold off the enemy alone and let the rest of the squad move on and catch up with the remaining enemies. Ben knew he had to catch up with the predators before they reached the guard's graveyard and save Sarah. Kathleen was surprised that the newcomer analyzed the situation so quickly and made a plan. The strategy was good. Suddenly, Leia jumped out in front of the guy. She said that she would hold off the enemy and let the rest of the squad look for a way to move on. The girl added that if this was all to delay them, then it would be better if heroes stronger than her continued on their way. Leia also noticed that the predator was 1 against 4, but was completely calm. Apparently, she was very dangerous. The girl swung her sword over the demoness's head, preparing to strike. She didn't want Ben to risk his life in this fight. Leia launched a series of consecutive strikes with her katana, trying to distract Jessica. The predator was not at all afraid. She calmly sent her hair to attack the girl. The 2 heroines clashed, neither of them willing to give in, but it was unclear whether Leia would be able to hold off such a strong opponent for long. The rest of the squad didn't stand and watch the fight for long. They decided to pass by the succubus while they had the chance. But Jessica was not going to give up. She decided to hold back the entire squad and not let anyone escape. Her hair instantly rushed down into the ground. She could fight several opponents at once. Ben immediately realized that the predator was using a ranged attack, and they needed to be more careful. The ground in front of the heroes began to rise, and the succubus's hair flew like blades, blocking the way. Kathleen's sword began to glow yellow, and as she rushed forward, she shouted that she would deal with the obstacle. A huge beam of divine light struck from the sword towards the hair, tearing the hair into shreds. Jessica didn't expect such strength. She couldn't believe that the girl had managed to overcome her bonds. At that moment, the heroes jumped over the demon and found themselves behind her. Ben landed and realized they had made it through. The squad moved forward, leaving Jessica and Leia behind to fight. The hero promised that he would never die and would bring Sarah and Leah home. The succubus was upset that the heroes tore her hair, but she was even more infuriated that the 3 of them were able to escape. She pointed at Leia and shouted that if she lost Steve's love because of this, it would be the Protector's fault. Suddenly, the earth shook, and green footprints could barely be seen on the surface. Someone rushed past the girls very quickly, leaving them behind. The speed was so high that Leia didn't even understand who it could be. She assumed it was Dean Lee, and was surprised that the old man had been following them all this time. Jessica forgot that there was a 5th stalker. She was afraid that if the plan failed due to her fault, then Steve would no longer have fun with her. Leia was serious and threw her katana sheath on the ground. Taking her sword firmly in her hands, she said that although Jessica was a spiritual-level predator, her thoughts were still just as down-to-earth. The girl became sad and replied that she couldn't understand, because all this time while Steve was in the Protoss, he thought only about the gift of light. He was not with her for a whole month, and this upset her greatly. Jessica burst into tears. Leia couldn't know how bad she felt without him. Due to the loud crying, waves of sound emanated from the succubus, which scared away all the birds in the area. Leia wasn't at all touched, but only noticed that Jessica was screaming like a cat at night. But suddenly she felt that something strange was happening to her body. It wasn't just a scream. The sound waves affected the brain, and now the girl couldn't control her body. Jessica was surprised. She didn't even realize that she was capable of such a thing. The sound waves of her scream can affect a person, causing him to lose his fighting ability. Taking advantage of the moment, the succubus went on the attack. She directed her hair at Leia, telling her to feel properly how love pierces her heart. Hundreds of hairs, which at the base resembled sharpened swords, flew towards the girl. Leia couldn't believe that she would die here, on her knees. There was a scream, and the clearing was filled with blood. Meanwhile, the hero and the team were close to catching up with the enemy. Wei's silhouette appeared in front of them, knowing that Jessica couldn't be relied upon. She had missed 3. He sat on a tree stump, holding a huge club in his hands, and the monkey was sure that he could deal with everyone with one blow. Michael chuckled and said that his favorite animal was the monkey, so he would fight it. Suddenly, another primate appeared behind him, preparing to attack, and the guy realized that there were several monkeys. The predator's club crashed into the ground. It was unclear whether the guard had managed to dodge it. Wei was happy with his victory. He could clone himself many times, and the strength of his copies was the same as the original. Suddenly, his joyful look changed to surprise, because he did not expect what he saw. Michael held his staff with one hand and ordered the remaining members of the squad to leave, as he could hurt them. His eyes turned red as one of the 7 deadly sins awoke inside the guy. Michael's face changed. From a smiling guy, he turned into an angry man. It was the sin of anger.